I'm Jessica, a 38-year-old office worker. I have been married to my husband, Brandon, for 5 years now. However, we've been struggling to have children. Being the eldest and only son, Brandon has always been under pressure from his mother, Chloe, to have a boy since we got married. These days, few people care about the gender of their children, and either a son or daughter can be an heir. Brandon himself doesn't care about the gender and says there's no rush to have children. But Chloe sees me as an adversary and always tells me when Brandon's not around. A woman who can't have children is useless in this family. If you can't have one, you might as well leave. Her words have hurt me deeply. I'm sorry, Chloe, but honestly, your words are very pressuring. I wish you wouldn't say such things. I finally gathered the courage to express my feeling to Chloe. But she didn't understand it at all and became even more oppressive, telling me not to defy her. I was shocked. I never expected such words from her. At first, I endured it because she's Brandon's mother and I didn't want to cause any trouble. But enduring Chloe's sarcasm while undergoing fertility treatments was mentally taxing, and my health started to decline. Realizing I couldn't hide it anymore, I confided in Brandon. Furious, Brandon sternly warned Chloe, which stopped her surprise visits to our apartment for a while, but she continued to hurl insults daily through WhatsApp. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant at the fertility clinic. The first sight of the fetal ultrasound filled me with indescribable emotions. When I showed Brandon the ultrasound at home, we both cried tears of joy. But our happiness was short-lived as I remembered a significant problem. Chloe. Telling her about the pregnancy would surely lead to her frequent visits, insisting that pregnancy isn't an illness, telling me to move around, or bragging about her own experiences. The doctor advised me not to overexert myself until a heartbeat is confirmed, so I was torn about what to do. After discussing with Brandon, we decided I should stay at my parents' house for a while. If I'm at my parents' house, even if I'm not feeling well, my parents are there, and Chloe won't make a surprise visit to my parents' house. It's close to my workplace and Chloe wouldn't barge in there. I called my mother right away, explaining about the pregnancy and Chloe, and decided to return home for a while. Brandon drove me to my parents' house, where they were overjoyed about my pregnancy. After greeting my parents, Brandon returned to our apartment. Being back at my parents' house, away from Chloe, brought me peace of mind. Soon after, morning sickness hit, and I spent days in bed. At work, my pale face raised concerns, and my boss suggested me to take a break, which I gratefully accepted. Many women at my job, including those who have undergone fertility treatments, understood my situation. Their support was comforting. Other than severe morning sickness, my pregnancy was uneventful, and the baby grew healthily. Feeling the first kicks was indescribably touching, and I lovingly caressed my belly every day. In fact, Brandon and I had already planned to move to a bigger house once we had a child. The reason is, our apartment was getting old, and while it's fine for just the two of us, it felt inconvenient for raising a child. We had set various criteria like proximity to stations, hospitals, and shopping facilities, and were searching accordingly. Then, Brandon suddenly sent me a photo. It was of a new high-rise condominium near the station. The area around the condo had everything needed for living, like commercial facilities and hospitals, and it was close to nurseries and schools, making it convenient for kids in the future. Completion is expected next month, and I casually entered a lottery for it. Surprisingly, we won. If you don't like it, we can just transfer it to someone else. Jessica, you can see it and decide. Hearing this, I immediately opened their website, was taken aback by the stylish design of the rooms, and exclaimed, "What?" The latest system kitchen, a bathroom with a sauna. Moreover, the unit we won was on the top floor of the 30-story building. The view from the window was amazing. I was a bit hesitant about the price, but Brandon works at a top-tier company, and with our salaries, we could afford it, so I decided to sign the contract for this condominium. Of course, I couldn't keep the purchase of a new high-rise condominium from my in-laws. I talked about it through Austin, my father-in-law. Austin said. "It's impressive that you young ones bought a condominium. If you need anything, I'm here to help." However, Chloe was not happy about this. When she found out we bought a high-rise condo, she was upset that we weren't living with her. Then, an incident happened. A week after moving in, Chloe suddenly visited. As usual, she went around the room complaining, but I entertained her with a smile. Then, suddenly, Chloe said she dropped her keys near the emergency stairs. "What? Why did you drop your keys by the emergency stairs? Don't tell me you climbed all the way up here?" I said, but apparently, she had dropped them while checking where the emergency stairs were, just in case. I went to the emergency stairs instead of Chloe to get the keys. At that moment, "I'm taking this house." I was suddenly pushed from behind, lost my balance, and fell down the stairs. "Ouch! Help, somebody!" Unable to stand due to pain and shock, I suddenly felt warm water flowing around my feet. Realizing I had probably broken my water, I thought about calling an ambulance, but since I had hit my head hard, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Brandon was there, looking worriedly at me. "Jessica, are you okay?" Brandon asked, visibly shaken, as I woke up. "Where am I? What happened to me?" I was still confused from just waking up and had a fuzzy consciousness from the head injury. When I touched my stomach, I felt something was off. My stomach, which was big until recently, had shrunk. Realizing this, I felt the blood drain from my face. "Hey, why is my stomach like this? Where's my baby? Where did my baby go?" I asked Brandon. Then Brandon quietly began to speak. "The baby in your belly is..." The moment I heard those words, I couldn't stop my tears and began crying out loud in the hospital room. Someone on the same floor found me, noticing the emergency staircase door left open. When they went to close it, they found me collapsed and hurriedly called an ambulance. Brandon asked why I approached the emergency stairs, so I explained everything about my interaction with Chloe. I was mentally harassed by Chloe when Brandon wasn't around before, which had once caused me to fall ill. Because of that, Brandon instructed me to always carry a voice recorder. Of course, I started recording the moment Chloe showed up unannounced. After listening to the voice recorder, it was clear that Chloe was the culprit. Brandon was furious to learn that his own mother had done such a thing. Then, a call came in on Brandon's mobile phone from a relative. On the call, Brandon heard a shocking fact. It seemed Chloe, thinking the baby had died, was telling relatives while crying. "Oh, my poor sweet grandchild has gone to heaven. It's so sad. It's because Jessica, even though she's pregnant, went out riding a bicycle." She was making up absurd stories. However, Austin, who was present, had heard nothing like that from either me or Brandon and was looking at Chloe in utter disbelief. It seemed impossible that Austin didn't know anything about it. And the idea of a woman in her 9th month of pregnancy riding a bicycle. That's why the relative called Brandon. It was unbelievable. Then Brandon, taking the voice recorder, said, "Jessica, let me borrow this for a bit. Can you leave the rest to me?" He then left the hospital room. As Brandon left, my parents arrived. After I explained everything, they were both shocked and angry. I decided to trust Brandon and wait in the hospital room for the outcome. Meanwhile, Brandon met with the relative who had called him. It turned out Chloe was gathering relatives at her house, explaining the incident. Of course, her words were nonsense, and she was just trying to make herself look innocent. Some relatives believed Chloe and wept, while others were skeptical and viewed her with suspicion. Suddenly, Brandon burst in, causing Chloe to look at him in surprise. "Huh? Brandon, why are you here? You were supposed to be with Jessica. She needs you. It's so sad about the baby. I was looking forward to its birth," Chloe said, even feigning tears. At that moment, something snapped in Brandon. "Enough, Mom. I know everything. You pushed Jessica down the emergency stairs. he said, pulling out the voice recorder in front of the relatives. Everyone was shocked to hear the conversation recorded so vividly. Who heard the voice could not hide their surprise. "Is this true?" Austin, whose face turned pale due to the shock, asked Chloe. "No, that's not true. This is nonsense. I didn't go near the emergency stairs." Even after hearing the recording, Chloe insisted she hadn't done it. However, there was a security camera nearby, and its footage would surely show me and Chloe entering the emergency stairwell. When Brandon mentioned this, Chloe, who had been speaking fluently until then, turned pale and began to tremble. "How awful! We're family, aren't we? How dare you shame your own mother like this?" Chloe clung to Brandon, insisting she was innocent and that it was Jessica who had slipped on her own. Even if that were true, leaving someone who had fallen and not helping them is questionable. However, the relatives who had already heard the voice recording did not believe Chloe's story. Instead, they urged her to go to the police and turn herself in. "It's not me. I'm not the bad one. You understand, don't you? You know I'm not the kind of person who would do this. Prove it in front of everyone." Chloe desperately appealed to Austin to affirm her innocence. But no one believed Chloe's story anymore. Soon, the police arrived, and from the audio and the subsequent security camera footage, it was clear that Chloe was the perpetrator. She was taken to the police station and arrested. The reason she did this was because the baby was a girl. Chloe had always been fixated on having a grandson, and when she found out the baby in the womb was a girl, she was disappointed. She thought that by pretending this baby never existed, she could try for a boy next time. When I heard this from the police, my head went blank with shock. Despite all that had happened, the baby grew healthily in an incubator and was discharged after 2 months. A few days after coming home from the hospital, Austin visited our apartment to apologize for the incident. He said that he and Chloe had divorced, that their house was sold, and he was going to move back to his family home. It was sad that the house where Brandon had grown up was gone, but since Austin wasn't to blame, we told him he was always welcome to visit. We regularly let Austin see his granddaughter after that. He adored his first grandchild and played with her with such kindness in his eyes. 3 years later, our second child, a boy, was born. Our daughter, now a big sister, couldn't wait to take care of her brother and was always by his side. Watching them was heartwarming, and every day was filled with happiness. But that happiness was disrupted by a visit from someone. The doorbell rang repeatedly, and when I checked the monitor, to my surprise, it was Chloe. I thought I would never see her again, and seeing her brought back memories of that day, making me feel nauseous. "What do you want now?" "I have no intention of seeing you again. Please leave," I said, but Chloe wouldn't listen. Apparently, Chloe had fallen ill, struggling daily with her health and finding it difficult to go to the hospital without a car. She had divorced Austin, and their house was now just an empty lot. She had no one else to turn to for help. Shockingly, Chloe knew I had given birth to a boy. She had apparently seen us in town, noticing Brandon holding our son. To Chloe, it was the long-desired grandson. She was determined to live with us and make the boy fond of her. "So you finally became a proper woman, giving birth to a boy. When you were pregnant with a girl, I was so disappointed in you. But now that you've had a boy, let's forget the past and live together, shall we?" For a moment, I doubted my own ears. Live together after all that? Impossible. What are you talking about? After what you did, living together is impossible. Leave now, or I'll call the police. Unfortunately, Brandon was at work at this crucial time. In distress, I immediately called Austin. He was supposed to visit the apartment today to see his son and daughter. With trembling hands, I called Austin. It turned out he was already near the apartment, so he hurried over. When Austin arrived, Chloe exclaimed in surprise. We couldn't argue in the entrance of the apartment building, as it would disturb others. But I had no intention of letting Chloe, whom we had cut ties with, into our apartment again. I gave Chloe an ultimatum: telling her I would call the police if she really didn't leave. Realizing her wish wouldn't be fulfilled, Chloe started to create a scene at the entrance and began arguing with Austin. Troubled, I contacted Brandon at work. After hearing the situation, Brandon called the police, and they soon arrived at our apartment. The police, understanding the situation, took Chloe away in a police car. As the commotion was in a conspicuous place, several residents of the apartment witnessed it. I felt sorry for causing inconvenience to many people. Later, after Brandon returned home, we discussed the situation with Austin and decided to move. As long as we lived here, Chloe would surely come back. We couldn't risk something happening to the children next time. Besides, Austin, though he said he had gone back to his family home, was living alone since his parents had passed away. Our daughter liked Austin and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. Austin is a kind person, and leaving him alone at his age worried us. When we proposed living together, Austin was very happy, despite everything that had happened. Afterwards, we bought a used property in the next town. Though it was second-hand, the house itself was very nice, and the surrounding environment was good too. Living in a high-rise was nice, but raising children in a place surrounded by nature seemed better. Right after moving, my daughter and Austin went to a mountain to hunt for beetles. Seeing them so happy made me feel that deciding to live together and choosing this place was the right decision. Once a month, we invite my parents over, and we all enjoy a home party, leading a happy life. Meanwhile, according to someone I was close with at the high-rise apartment, Chloe, undeterred, visited the high-rise again. But when told we had moved and she couldn't find out where, she left disappointed. If it weren't for what happened, Chloe might have been here, feeling the children's growth with us. Well, it's a natural consequence, but still. Later, I heard Chloe reluctantly returned to her hometown, rented a small apartment, and now lives a lonely life, working part-time in cleaning.
Cynthia, are you okay? Tears welled up in my husband's eyes as he spoke to me. I had suddenly developed severe stomach pain right after eating the beef stew made by Olivia and was rushed to the hospital. In the hospital room, my husband showed me a video. What is this? Upon seeing the video and understanding the situation, I immediately felt an overwhelming nausea and covered my mouth with both hands. This is absolutely unforgivable. The video clearly showed Olivia moving in and out of the toilet while cooking. I am Cynthia, a 25-year-old office worker. My husband Kevin, who is 3 years older than me, and I are about to celebrate our third wedding anniversary. Kevin and I married following his earnest approach, but even after 3 years of marriage, we have not been able to find much time just for the two of us. I got promoted right after getting married and have been extremely busy ever since. Still, Kevin always says gently, "I am happy just being married to you, so don't worry about it." I'm sorry, Kevin, and thank you. Kevin and I live in a family-oriented condominium. Both of us strongly desired to have children, so we chose this place with the future in mind. Here with Kevin, I'll build a warm family and welcome the children we'll have someday. But my busy schedule never eased, and we couldn't have a child for 3 years. Then one day, as we were eating dinner as usual, Kevin spoke to me with a serious expression. "Hey, I got promoted. I think my salary will increase significantly. So if it's okay with you, Cynthia, how about you quit your job and become a housewife? Let's seriously think about having children." I was surprised by the sudden suggestion. A promotion? That's great. Yeah, I've been thinking about children too. I want to start preconception care seriously. And so, our journey into preconception care began. However, I turned out I had difficulty conceiving, and even after 6 months of preconception care, we still hadn't been blessed with a child. I'm sorry. It seems like it didn't happen this month either. And don't apologize, Cynthia. It's not your fault. Every time I felt down, Kevin would gently stroke my head. I'm so grateful to be married to such a kind person. Not just Kevin, but his mother Olivia has also been kind to me. Lately, hearing that we were having trouble conceiving, Olivia started visiting us occasionally. She began living alone in an apartment near our home after my father-in-law passed away a few years ago. Olivia, who dotes on her only son Kevin excessively, has been good to me since the beginning of our marriage. Olivia brings over lots of side dishes saying, "You need to eat nutritious food. Rest up, Cynthia. I'm alone and free, so don't worry about me. I have to take care of Kevin's wife." And she even prepares meals for us. Moreover, Olivia says, "I don't want to impose on Cynthia," and never stays to eat with us, no matter how much I invite her. Olivia is such a kind person. Kevin must have grown up with that kindness. I couldn't be more grateful for this blessed environment. Then one day, I was feeling under the weather and lying on the sofa as dinner time approached. Olivia, having heard about it from Kevin, came over with a worried look, bringing dinner she had prepared. "Cynthia, are you okay? This is fried chicken I just made. Kevin hasn't come home from work yet, but I thought I'd bring it over early so you can eat it while it's hot." "Wow, really? Thank you. Won't you eat with me, Olivia?" When I invited her, Olivia shook her head. "I already ate at home. I'll going back now," she said and left quickly. I'm happy she's considerate, but I wish we could have a meal together. Maybe I should invite her more firmly next time. While pondering this, I took a bite of the fried chicken Olivia had brought. That instant, ouch, what? I felt a sharp pain in my cheek and let out a small cry. I hurriedly spat out the hard object from my mouth and was shocked at what it was. "What is this? Glass?" It was a piece of glass about 0.3 inches in size. Was this in the fried chicken? As my heartbeat quickened, I desperately racked my brain. Did Olivia put it in? No, that can't be. Olivia wouldn't do such a thing. Maybe she broke some dishware nearby and it got mixed in with the batter. Yes, that must be it. Thinking that the kind Olivia could never do something so malicious, I decided not to worry too much about it, despite feeling a little uneasy. Telling her there was a glass in the dish you made would surely shock her, so I decided not to mention it to either Olivia or Kevin. A week passed, and my health did not improve. Hearing this, Olivia began bringing over dishes almost daily. However, since then, I frequently found foreign objects in the dishes Olivia brought. Hair in the hamburger, bugs on the chili con carne. And it always happened when Olivia brought over dishes just for me before Kevin returned from work. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Alarmed, I decided to talk to Kevin. You know, I'm hesitant to say this, but sometimes there are things like glass shards or bugs in the dishes Olivia brings over. It only happens when she brings dishes just for me. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but it's happening too often. Kevin looked utterly surprised as I spoke uneasily. Mom, she seems to like you, Cynthia, and doesn't look like someone who would harass. But now that you mention it, she's been complaining about her forgetfulness lately. Could she have started developing dementia? Saying this, Kevin seemed lost in thought with a I like Olivia too and don't want to suspect her, but it's scary since it involves food. I've been feeling unwell lately, which makes me even more worried. Yes, I had been feeling unwell since then. Feeling unwell? Haven't you been late on your period this month? Could it be that you're pregnant? Kevin's words made me realize. That's true. I'll go to the hospital tomorrow. Saying this, I was visibly unsettled, and Kevin gently stroked my head. I'll talk to Mom about it tomorrow. I have the day off. If she really might have dementia, we need to think about what to do. Don't worry, Cynthia. Okay, thank you, Kevin. So I left the matter with Olivia to Kevin and decided to visit the hospital. The next day, The delay in your period hasn't been long enough to confirm pregnancy yet, but your symptoms are similar to early pregnancy nausea. Please take care to not stress your body too much," said the doctor at the hospital. I returned home, my heart fluttering with hope. I might be pregnant. If that's true, it's finally happening. Though it wasn't confirmed yet, I was somewhat elated, unaware of what was to come next. When I got home, Kevin was sitting on the sofa with a troubled look. "Mom might be starting to develop dementia. She doesn't remember anything about the foreign objects in the dishes. I'm thinking of taking her to the hospital soon." Hearing this, I felt a mix of relief that Olivia wasn't doing it intentionally and concerned that she might have dementia. I installed a caregiving monitoring camera at Mom's house today. This way, we can respond immediately if anything happens to her. That's good to hear. It eases my mind a bit. I'm mostly at home, so I'll try to keep an eye on it as much as I can. I missed the chance to tell Kevin about the possibility of being pregnant, as I saw him looking downhearted about Olivia. Well, it's not confirmed yet. It's better to report it once I'm sure right. Then the next day at noon, the doorbell rang, and when I looked through the monitor, there was Olivia, standing at the front door, holding a large pot. "What are you doing with such a big pot?" As I hurriedly went to greet her, Olivia looked down apologetically. "Cynthia, I heard everything from Kevin about foreign objects mixed in the dishes. I don't know how to apologize." "It's okay, it wasn't intentional. And I noticed everything before swallowing, so there's no harm done to my body. Please, don't be too hard on yourself." As I said this, I thought I saw Olivia's eyebrows twitch slightly. "I see. You didn't swallow any of it? That's good then." Olivia said this with a somewhat strange smile, and at that moment, I had no suspicions. "I made this beef stew as an apology. You haven't had your period, right? In case you're pregnant, you need to eat nutritious food. I put lots of healthy ingredients in it, so eat up." I felt uneasy as Olivia said this and handed me the pot. "Wait, how did you know I haven't had my period? Did Kevin tell you?" "Ah, yes, that's right. Kevin sent me a message about it yesterday." Hearing Olivia's words, I sighed. "Kevin, he immediately told you when I was feeling unwell before, too? He doesn't need to worry you like that." "Kevin is just worried about you. Well, please eat this." After saying this, Olivia left hurriedly, almost as if she was in a rush. "Thank you." Is she in a hurry for something? I placed the pot Olivia gave me in the kitchen and served myself some beef stew. It was just about lunchtime, so I thought it was a good time to eat. As I sat down and tasted the beef stew, I noticed an indescribably unpleasant flavor. What's this? Could it be a mistake in the seasoning? I thought so, but I couldn't just throw away the beef stew Olivia had made, so I managed to finish the serving I had dished up. But by then I finished. The strange taste of the stew had made me feel quite ill. I felt bad, but I couldn't finish the rest of the beef stew. As I was washing the dishes, suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach and doubled over on the spot. What is this? Could the beef stew have been spoiled? The pain intensified over time, and I broke out in a cold sweat, unable to endure it any longer. I called an ambulance with trembling hands. Then I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw the stark white ceiling of a hospital. Where am I? Oh, I remember now. My stomach hurt. In a daze, I gently rubbed my stomach. It seemed I had already been treated, as the pain had subsided. Then a nurse entered the room. "Oh, you're awake. I'll get the doctor right away," she said with a smile and quickly returned with a doctor. "Cynthia, how are you feeling? Did you eat something bad before the stomach pain started?" A gentle-looking male doctor asked me in a calm tone. "Just before I ate beef stew made by my mother-in-law, Olivia. It tasted a bit off, so maybe it was spoiled. As I pondered and spoke, the doctor nodded while listening. I see. Given your symptoms, it's likely some bacteria got into your stomach causing the pain. If it was spoiled, that would make sense. You might continue to experience some abdominal pain for a while, but as long as you take your medicine, you can recover at home. Hearing the doctor's words, I felt a little relieved. I'm relieved it's not serious enough for hospitalization. Please rest quietly here for today. Call us if you need anything, the doctor and nurse said before leaving the room. Right after that, the door of the room burst open energetically. Cynthia, are you okay? There stood Kevin, panting, his face pale with worry. Kevin, I'm okay. It seems I ate something bad. They said I can go home if I take the medicine, but I might have to stay here tonight. Despite telling him it was just food poisoning, Kevin's face remained pale. Cynthia, what did you eat right before the stomach pain started? You don't need to downplay it for my sake. Please, tell me the truth. Surprised by Kevin's earnest expression, I responded. Kevin is overacting over a simple case of food poisoning. Olivia brought over some beef stew, but it seems it was spoiled. I thought it tasted strange, but it's my fault for not stopping. Olivia was just trying to care for me. As I spoke, Kevin's brow furrowed. It was Mom, wasn't it? His voice was filled with suppressed anger, and I was startled. Kevin, what's wrong? What do you mean by it was Mom? Kevin took a deep breath to calm himself and sat down on the chair beside the bed. Cynthia, look at this. Saying so, Kevin took out a tablet from his bag and showed me the screen. It was a video of Olivia's house. Is it the monitoring camera you set up at Olivia's place? I asked, and Kevin nodded gravely. It's a recording from a few hours ago. This is when Mom was making the beef stew she brought to you. Sure enough, Olivia was seen in her kitchen, preparing beef stew. There was nothing unusual at first glance. After finishing, Olivia untied her apron and went into the bathroom. Kevin, what is this supposed to mean? Just as I was about to ask Kevin, what appeared next on the screen left me speechless. What? What is this? Olivia came back from the bathroom holding a plastic container, then went back into the bathroom again. A few minutes later, she emerged and poured the contents of the container into the stew pot. So the beef stew had Olivia's waste mixed into it. No, can it be? I felt a sudden surge of nausea and covered my mouth with both hands. My heart raced with disgust, and I couldn't stop trembling. On the screen, Olivia was muttering something while stirring the pot with a ladle. I listened closely to her words and froze in horror. Won't allow a child. I won't let anyone take Kevin away from me. Olivia was muttering these words with a fierce expression. I was too terrified to speak, only able to shiver. Kevin held me tightly. I'm sorry, Cynthia. I know this is shocking. When I heard you were staying in the hospital, I went home to get some things and saw Mom's pot in our kitchen. I feared she might have put something strange in it again. When I checked the camera footage, this is what I found. Kevin spoke in a quivering voice. This can't be brushed off as forgetfulness. It's clearly malicious, I whispered, and Kevin apologized deeply. I'm so sorry, Cynthia. I understand if you want a divorce after this. I'm so sorry for what my mom did. Shocked, I shook my head. Stop it, Kevin. It's not your fault. As I spoke in a panic, the door to the hospital room opened with a noise. Kevin, what are you doing? In came Olivia, voicing her surprise as she entered the hospital room. Olivia? The Olivia I had adored until just a moment ago now seemed so terrifying. I was so scared of Olivia that I couldn't utter a word. Meanwhile, Kevin, without hesitation, approached Olivia as soon as he saw her. Mom, what have you done? He grabbed Olivia's shoulders and shouted loudly. Startled by the sudden confrontation, Olivia's eyes widened. What? What are you talking about? What did I do? Don't play dumb. What did you feed Cynthia? At Kevin's words, Olivia's expression twitched. Oh, no. Did I make something strange and again? I'm sorry, Cynthia. I'm becoming forgetful lately. Olivia tried to pass it off with a smile. However, Kevin mercilessly thrust the tablet screen in front of Olivia. It's all recorded here, Mom. Why? Why did you do this? Seeing her own actions on the tablet, the color drained from Olivia's face. Why is there such a video? The monitoring camera was only supposed to be checked if something happened to me, wasn't it? Olivia exclaimed in shock, covering her mouth with both hands. Cynthia was taken to the hospital because of the food you made, Mom. It's only natural to check the camera. Everything you did and said was recorded here. You can't lie your way out of this. Kevin confronted Olivia with a voice deep with anger. Unable to say anything in return, Olivia just looked down silently. Olivia, did you do all that on purpose? I managed to ask with a trembling voice. Olivia then glared at me with disdain. Yes, it was on purpose. I thought you might be pregnant after hearing about your continued illness. A child with Kevin. I could never allow that. Olivia's face was filled with hatred, sending chills down my spine. But I didn't back down and responded. After being so kind to me all this time? Why suddenly? If I did something wrong, please tell me. I said this, gripping the sheets tightly. Olivia sneered at my desperate expression. Suddenly? Oh, Cynthia, I never like you. I resented you for taking away my precious only son. But I had to be kind to avoid being disliked by Kevin. Hearing Olivia's words, something inside me snapped. I had always believed in Olivia. I loved her, convinced she wasn't the kind of person to be malicious. But now, enough is enough. I felt something inside me go cold. Oblivious to my state, Olivia continued her tirade. If you two had a child, Kevin would stop paying attention to me. So I thought causing a miscarriage with various things mixed in the food would be good. But then I heard you hadn't had your period. I had to act quickly. Kevin interrupted Olivia's rant. Did you hear that Cynthia was feeling unwell and her period was delayed from her directly? Kevin asked sternly, causing Olivia to shake her shoulders in surprise. Didn't Kevin tell you, Olivia? When I asked this, Kevin shook his head. I didn't tell anyone. Mom, where did you hear that? Kevin shook Olivia's shoulders as he spoke. Seeing Olivia turning paler, I hesitantly spoke up. Olivia, I don't want to believe it, but you didn't plant the listening device in our house, did you? At my words, Olivia's face twisted in frustration. Yes, I did. So what? I was planning to make you and Kevin divorce if something happened to him. Besides, you put cameras in my house too, so you're no better. Olivia shouted defiantly, but Kevin seemed too drained to be angry anymore. I spoke to Olivia with a cold voice. Olivia, what you did is a crime. Deliberately contaminating food and planting a listening device in someone's house. Once I recover, I will pursue legal action. Don't think you can get away with this. I was surprisingly calm. The anger and fear towards Olivia, the sadness of being betrayed, It all seemed irrelevant now.
I feel nothing towards you anymore. Right now, all I want is to be away from someone like you as soon as possible. I will hire a lawyer, so communicate through them from now on.
As I said this, Olivia's eyes widened in shock.
Wait a minute. A crime? Am I going to be arrested? It's ridiculous to sue me for this. What do you mean this? Your actions have caused real harm to my body. There's evidence. Don't think you can talk your way out of it.
As I spoke, Olivia grabbed Kevin's hand, trembling.
That's Cynthia's true nature. She's the kind of woman who bullies an old lady. Scary, isn't it? I did everything thinking of you, Kevin. You understand, don't you, Kevin?
Olivia appealed with a seemingly gentle smile, but Kevin looked down on her coldly.
What are you talking about? The scary one is you, Mom. And what you did wasn't for me. It was all for yourself. You hurt someone important to me for your own sake. I never want to have anything to do with you again. Let's cut ties.
Kevin said this and shook off Olivia's hand. Olivia's smile faded, perhaps thinking Kevin would take her side.
Wait, Kevin. Just leave now. Neither Cynthia nor I want to see your face anymore,
Kevin said and pushed Olivia out of the room.
Kevin, I'm sorry. It was all my fault, please. I have no one but you.
Olivia cried and banged on the door in the hallway. Soon, security came due to the commotion and took Olivia away. Afterwards, my health quickly recovered and I was able to return home safely. Upon discharge, we submitted the camera footage to the police. An investigation began immediately. The listening devices in our house were found, leading to Olivia's swift arrest. Rejected by Kevin, Olivia seemed to have suffered a mental breakdown, crying and wailing during the investigation.
I did nothing wrong. It's her fault for trying to take Kevin away,
Olivia shouted, lunging at the officers. I demanded compensation from Olivia, making her pay in a lump sum. To pay the compensation, Olivia incurred debts and now works in physical labor as a live-in worker. Reportedly, Olivia spends her days working hard and crying alone in her apartment. I told Kevin he didn't need to force himself to legally disassociate from Olivia, but he said,
I always knew she had trouble letting go, but I never realized she was so obsessively attached. Now that I know Mom's true nature, I'm afraid to remain in a parent-child relationship with her.
He immediately proceeded with a disownment process. Then, a month later, it turned out I was pregnant. Both the baby and I were healthy and developing well. Kevin and I cried with joy and promised each other, let's build a warm family. From now on, I want to create a bright future with Kevin and our baby.
Could you please leave now that the greetings are over? To our astonishment, Kristen continued with her harsh words. And to top it off, she laughed and said, "Ha ha ha ha, you'll just make our new home smell poor." I was infuriated by her comment and touched James's arm. "James, let's go." Upon hearing me, James, who had been quietly crossing his arms and closing his eyes, stood up. This was not the usual calm James. I was unexpectedly overwhelmed by his aura. James then spoke quietly. "Why would we want to be in a home that smells poor? Let Rian, who makes good money, renovate it. I built this place. I'll destroy it. Make it like it never existed." At James' words, Kristen seemed stunned. Then Rian's voice rang out in anger. "My name is Amy. James and I have been married for 50 years this year. We are blessed with one daughter and one son. Rian lives far away and is married. He is on a career fast track at a major law firm in his hometown and things seemed to be going well for him. Life without any problems. At the beginning of this milestone year of our 50th wedding anniversary, we were overjoyed to hear that Rian would be getting married to a woman who works in the same law office. Rian is already approaching 45. Although his career is going well, we were worried that he wasn't getting married, so this puts our minds at ease about our kids. We just have to keep living long, healthy lives now, we talked. The reason for Rian's sudden marriage seems to be a pregnancy. We were thrilled that we would not only have a marriage, but also a grandchild. Kristen, who's set to become our daughter-in-law, is busy with her job and couldn't come for introductions. As a result, we couldn't have a family meeting either. Still, her belly is growing, so thinking of the child, we agreed they should get married sooner. On the day they submitted the marriage papers, we received a call from Rian. "Mom, the marriage papers were submitted successfully today." "That's great! Congratulations!" I was thrilled to hear our family was growing. "Do we have a new daughter-in-law named Kristen? Is she there?" "Yeah, she's here. Hang on." I hadn't even met Kristen yet. "I'd like to say hello," I thought, and asked Rian to pass the phone to her. "Sure." Then I heard a brief response on the other end of the line. "Nice to meet you. I'm Amy, Rian's mom. Congratulations on your marriage. Looking forward to getting to know you better." I introduced myself and offered my congratulations. The response I got back was less than enthusiastic. It was different than what I expected and made me feel a little uneasy. I'd naturally expected her to introduce herself, maybe say, "Nice to meet you back." Maybe I set my expectations too high. Perhaps she's not feeling well right now. Thinking that, I told her, "Let's meet up when work and your health allow," and ended the call briefly. I felt a bit sad, but there would be other opportunities to meet in the future. I hoped that we would gradually become closer as a family. However, several months went by without meeting Kristen, and then we received news that Jonas had been born. James and I were elated and checked with Rian when we could meet. "I'll check with Kristen," he said, but it was hard to schedule as she wasn't feeling well. Fed up, James and I decided at the very least we wanted to send a gift. So with Rian's approval, we sent a money order. A few days later, Rian called us on video. "Dad, Mom, thanks for the gift. We just went for the 1-month checkup and he's growing strong. This is Jonas." What appeared on the camera was a cute baby. I couldn't help but smile. "Congratulations! You're a dad now, Rian. You're going to have to support Kristen and step up." At that, Rian smiled and nodded. "Is Kristen available to chat?" I wanted to offer her my best wishes, so I asked Rian. Then I heard what must have been an overheard conversation. "No, absolutely not," came a sharp voice from Kristen, rejecting me. "Well, if that's the case, no worries. Sorry to disturb you. We'll catch up another time." I had no other choice but to say that. We still hadn't even seen Kristen's face. All I wanted to do was say hello. Even though she must be tired post-birth, she was out for the 1-month checkup today. It's not like she's not presentable. Still, I couldn't press the matter and ended the call, satisfied with just seeing Jonas for the day. I had to ask Rian to send me a photo of Jonas. I wanted to show it to James, who had been away. Rian sent the photo right away. Looking at it, I felt both joy and struggled to suppress my negative feelings toward Kristen, who I hadn't met yet. Finally, the opportunity to meet came. Rian was appointed as a senior partner at his office. Being a senior partner is a step below the representative. That's a big promotion. To celebrate, we decided to have dinner together. Kristen and Jonas would join us too. I brought a little treat for Kristen, whom I was meeting for the first time, and a little bib made by a friend for Jonas. We met up with Rian's family at a restaurant that had private rooms. Nice to meet you. I'm Amy, Rian's mom. I greeted just as I once did on the phone. Kristen looked much younger than her 40 years and was strikingly beautiful. She was holding the baby tenderly in her arms. Rian introduced his family, saying, Dad, Mom, long time no see. I'm sorry we couldn't visit sooner. This is my wife, Kristen, and our son, Jonas. Kristen only gave a slight nod without saying a word. We sat up around the table, and next to Kristen, a portable crib was set up where Jonas lay. When the food arrived, Kristen began eating in silence. She seemed like a reserved person. James was chatting with Rian about work and Jonas. I tried to engage with Kristen, but only received short answers. Does Jonas sleep well? So, she replied. She's pretty standoffish, James remarked to Rian when Kristen went to the restroom. Rian gave a wry smile and said, She may not be chatty, but she adores Jonas. Plus, she says she loves me. I intend to cherish her. I had my own thoughts on Kristen, but Rian's feelings came first. If she's the woman Rian loves, then we'll support them from now on. They probably have their hands full with a small child. From afar, we wanted to cheer on Rian and his wife. James felt the same. That's true. What matters most is how Rian feels. But as parents, we'd like to offer any support we can. Don't hesitate to reach out, said James. Rian thanked us for the words and shared his future plans. I got promoted and work is going well. We're married with a child, so maybe a house is next. Both James and I were pleased by this. We wholeheartedly wanted to support Rian as he takes steps toward happiness. Sure, let us help with the house too. Have you decided on a location yet? James asked Rian. No, Kristen is planning on quitting her job, and we have no plans for childcare. We're looking for something close to where we live now, so my commute isn't affected, Rian replied. In response, James suggested, How about this? We actually own a piece of land that's currently a parking lot. How would you feel about building there? We can make it a housewarming gift for you guys to design as you like. Rian felt both humbled and grateful for the generous offer. Yet, expenses would continue to mount. On the other hand, we no longer had major expenses. There was no hesitation to use the funds to help our kids. Dad, Mom, thank you so much. Rian deeply expressed his gratitude to us. What are you all talking about? That's when Kristen came back. Well, actually, Rian began to tell Kristen. It's all right. We can talk about it later, James cut in, probably feeling a bit bashful. Laughing at the shy James, the gathering wrapped up for the day. Shortly after, Rian officially decided to build a home after consulting with a construction company. Since the land was being used for coin-operated parking, they quickly issued a notice of closure. Construction began as soon as they settled the home contract. A few months later, a beautiful home reflecting both Rian and Kristen's preferences was erected. They completed their move and set up their home. James and I were invited by Rian. We brought a small celebration gift and headed to Rian's new home. The sound of a brand new intercom chimed and the door opened. Dad, Mom, welcome. From a trendy entrance, Rian greeted us. We're here! Where's Kristen? But she was nowhere to be seen. I asked Rian. She's around, Rian said with a wry smile. Although we sensed something odd in his smile, James and I said, May we come in? And entered the house. The living room was beautiful, lots of natural light. There was even a balcony. Once Jonas got a little bit older, he could play under the sun. The home felt cozy, filled with wood and rooms that reflected Rian's taste. Little Jonas was also sleeping soundly in the crib. Wow, what a lovely home! I glanced around the living room and ended up near Jonas. As I admired his peaceful face, I shared my thoughts with Rian. James looked delighted, lounging on the sofa. Rian smiled at our reactions, looking quite pleased. However, Kristen was still nowhere to be seen. Where could she have gone? It seemed I wasn't the only one wondering. James spoke up again, asking Rian, "So where's Kristen?" Rian hesitated for a moment before answering. "She's sleeping." "Sleeping?" Both James and I were genuinely surprised. "What's going on? Is she not feeling well? Was Jonas up all night crying, keeping her awake?" I asked. But Rian shook his head. "No, it's not like that." Upon hearing this, James and I exchanged glances. James then said, "Look, we helped with the house because we wanted to, not because we had to. But come on, at least say hello if you're in good health. That's just basic courtesy." I wholeheartedly agreed. Reluctantly, Rian went upstairs to fetch Kristen. Kristen came downstairs with a sullen expression, asking, "What is it?" "Oh, Kristen, we didn't mean to intrude. We just wanted to say hi," I quickly added, trying to smooth things over. "Dad and Mom brought some dishes to celebrate your new home," Rian chimed in, addressing Kristen. However, Kristen folded her arms and said arrogantly, "Is that so? Well, now that they've exchanged pleasantries, can you please leave immediately?" I was taken aback by her words. "Whoa, Kristen, what's gotten into you?" "Just look, the last meal we had was at some cheap place. Both of you are dressed in nothing special today or any other day. The baby shower gifts for Jonas were few, and the housewarming gift is just some dishes. You may be a lawyer and make good money, but if your family is like this, I'm not interested in associating with you. It's embarrassing and would tarnish the vibe of our new home," Kristen stated. Her words were so shocking, they almost seemed like a mistake. I couldn't believe it, but it seemed to be reality. While nothing major had happened before, I had sensed that we weren't exactly favored. Still, there was no reason to expect such harsh words. I was absolutely appalled. I couldn't believe it. This was going nowhere. I touched James's arm. "James, let's go home." Upon hearing that, James, who had been sitting silently with his arms crossed and his eyes closed, stood up. This wasn't the kind-hearted James I knew. I felt overpowered by his presence. James quietly spoke. "I bet you don't like this shabby house. Let Rian with his high-paying job renovate it. I'll just tear this one down. After all, I built it. I'll erase it, make it like it never existed." Kristen seemed stunned by James's words. "What? Who built it? Are you out of your mind?" she said almost mockingly. "Enough is enough." That's when Rian's angry voice echoed. "What? Speak up," Kristen said to Rian. At that moment, Jonas started to cry. I approached the crib and picked up Jonas. "This house was built by Dad and Mom. This land also belongs to Dad. Haven't I told you that many times?" Rian said to Kristen. "You're probably doing that to obligate me into taking care of your parents, right?" "There's no way that's true." Kristen became flustered. Rian spoke to Kristen. "I've explained this many times. If you don't like my parents, that's fine. But at least show basic courtesy and manners." Kristen went silent, looking uncomfortable at Rian's words. "You two need to talk. Kristen's rudeness is Rian's rudeness." I can't tell what James really thinks, but he said that and told me it was time to leave. I gently laid Jonas back in his crib. For Jonas's sake, Rian and his wife need to think things through. "I'll visit again, Jonas," I said, touching Jonas's hand. This was the first time I'd ever been this close to Jonas. And for the first time, I felt something was off. "Amy, let's go." "Ah, yes." Yet without knowing what that off feeling was, I left Rian's house, called by James. I wonder if those two will be okay. James smiled at my words. They'll be fine. But James meant what he said. Rian needs to have a serious talk with Kristen. I nodded in agreement with what James had said. Must be his own way of expressing love. Would be nice if both of them would come to apologize. Then the next night came. Rian contacted us, wanting to come over. When I told James, of course he agreed. And there they were, all three of the Rian family, at our doorstep. Dad, Mom, I'm really sorry about yesterday. Next to Rian, Kristen grudgingly said her sorry. What a grumpy look. I couldn't see any remorse in her face. How about you, Kristen? Got anything to say? I directed my voice toward Kristen. After all, just yesterday, Rian had told us to do what's humanly decent. It's wrong to let Rian take all the blame for her rudeness. I'm sorry. Kristen said it, but her tone was still dismissive. I was taken aback. Maybe expecting something from Kristen was my mistake. What's with the attitude? You promised to apologize properly, right? Rian scolded Kristen, who shot back. Who said that? You dragged me here, Rian. In response, Kristen defiantly fought back. James and I watched them and sighed. What kind of people are they? That's it. I want a divorce. Being with Kristen just makes me miserable. It seemed Rian finally had enough. He spat out the words. Maybe a part of James and me had been hoping for this. We didn't try to stop him. Are you kidding me? Jonas is only an infant. We can't divorce. Kristen got red with anger. I'll take custody of Jonas, Rian said. Kristen was shocked by those words. I stopped Rian. Before you do, go get a DNA test. At my words, James, Rian, and Kristen all froze. I don't even know why I said it, but saying it out loud was a relief. Finally, the source of my unease from yesterday became clear. Jonas doesn't really look like Rian, nor does he look like Kristen. Sure, he's a cute baby, but I don't know, he doesn't feel like family. At my words, Kristen's face turns beet red with anger. Do you realize how incredibly rude that is? An apology won't cut it. I agree with her, Amy. That was uncalled for, James adds, sounding genuinely sorry. I get it, but men don't have the same physical connection to a child as a woman does. There's no tangible proof he's Rian's son. With divorce on the table, issues like custody and child support will come up. Why not just get a test? We are not getting a divorce. Jonas is Rian's child, and we're not getting any tests. Kristen's anger only intensifies. Well, I'm in the wrong too, but I just can't shake this bad feeling. Fine, we'll do the test. Surprisingly, it's Rian who agrees. What? Kristen is livid. Her face is pale, different from before. I did find it odd when Kristen suddenly said she loved me. Never felt that way before, and then she was pregnant so soon after. That's not true! Just trust me! Clearly, Rian had his doubts too. At his words, Kristen's demeanor changes. It felt like my bad premonition had come true, and I felt pity for Rian. Still, Rian says calmly, First, we'll do a DNA test for Jonas. Regardless of the results, we'll divorce. We'll discuss child support and custody later. Sorry, Dad, Mom, for the trouble. We'll be in touch. Rian leaves with Kristen, who's now pale and wailing. Bad feelings tend to be right. The DNA test showed a 0% chance that Jonas is Rian's child. When Rian reported this, he said, I knew something was off. But he looked terrible. I couldn't find the words. Well, at least you won't be raising another man's child, James struggles to say. We haven't told Kristen yet. Because she might get emotional and make talking difficult, we decide to go to Rian's new place. It's silent in the car. Rian probably has it the hardest. But both James and I are fuming. As we arrive, Rian opens the front door. No one responds to his, "I'm home." Instead, we hear Kristen's voice from inside. She seems to be on the phone, and she's talking so loudly that we can't help but overhear. She's on speakerphone. We could hear the other person on the call as well. The high-pitched, distinct voice was loud even through the speaker. But what silenced us was the content of their conversation. "So listen, if they do a DNA test, we're screwed. I went through the trouble of marrying a dull single guy, and it's all going to be for nothing. And Lawrence, you're in hot water too if they find out you got an employee from a law firm you consult for pregnant. You think they'll find out if you don't say anything? You managed to get married. We have to make this work somehow." Those words said it all. Turns out Kristen was having an affair with a married business associate. She discovered she was pregnant, so she targeted Rian, who was single and promising, and married him. And it seems that affair is still ongoing. "I'd wish you'd just divorce him already." That seemed to be the last straw for Rian. He stomped into the living room, looked at Kristen, who was surprised to see us, and said in a strained voice, "I heard everything. Leave. Now." "Rian!" Kristen looked absolutely pale. On the other end of the phone, a flustered voice said, "Wait, your husband's back?" "That voice, it's Lawrence from Mizono Corp, isn't it? We'll talk later." Rian's low voice seems to reach even the other side of the phone. Clearly, Lawrence hadn't expected the phone to be on speaker. Scrambling, a desperate voice on the other end said, "Wait, Mr. Rian." But James grabbed the phone and hung up. Kristen was visibly searching for an excuse. I broke the silence. "If you had treated us like human beings from the start, maybe you wouldn't have been found out. Though I can't imagine someone with a heart doing what you did." At my words, Kristen broke down. "Please forgive me. I really do love Rian." She sank to the floor, but it was too late. We had heard the entire conversation. "Raise Jonas on your own," said Rian, the man who had briefly been a father. In the end, Rian filed for divorce. Kristen had to pay a large settlement. She found her workplace untenable and resigned. Lawrence got fired as well. Turns out, he was in charge of a company that Rian was consulting for. Lawrence's infidelity also came to light, and he's facing a divorce as well. Looks like Kristen will probably have to pay another hefty settlement. I don't know what happened after that. Maybe even if the divorce went through, I doubt Lawrence would ever marry Kristen. Just a hunch. Although Rian was down, he seemed relieved and mentioned something James had once said. "Glad I didn't end up raising someone else's kid. If Mom hadn't suggested a DNA test, things could have gone really bad." Apparently, Rian himself felt that the child didn't much resemble either of them. No, he's not bothered by it. They're strangers, and it doesn't matter anymore. But knowing Rian, he's kind-hearted. He's probably worried about Jonas deep down. Offering to settle the divorce with $100 monthly payments probably shows his consideration for Jonas. It's just a part of life's journey. Rian also has his own faults for marrying someone he couldn't fully understand. He should remember that and move on. Kristen did care for Jonas. Hopefully, she'll change her ways, reflect on her actions, and live responsibly as a mother. Rian moved back to his family home. He's busy with work and says it's tough living alone in that house. So, we held a family meeting to decide what to do with the house. Turns out my daughter Eleanor's family offered to buy it after hearing the situation. It seems my granddaughter Susie is considering a job in this area. She's dating someone local, so it looks like eventually Susie and her partner will live there. Rian joked, "Susie's ahead of me again," but he seemed genuinely happy. I've always adored Susie like my own child. Things are looking up. Although Rian said he wouldn't marry again, he ended up marrying a woman 20 years his junior. He helped Roseanne when she fainted from anemia, and that's how they met. We wondered if he was being deceived again, but Roseanne has been very kind to us and even offered to live together. We shouldn't lose our trust in people because of Kristen. We decided to trust again. This one should be okay. My intuition said so. Later, Rian remarried. A year after that, a child who looks just like Rian, named Stephen, was born. You never know what life will bring. Even if you're in despair now, as long as there's tomorrow, the potential for happiness is endless.
Today, we're having a Christmas party with 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me. I was filled with questions at Kieran's statement. The Christmas party was supposed to be at Kieran's brother, Tommy's house. Soon after, my father-in-law Brent and mother-in-law Annie arrived. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they looked furious, like they were about to face a demon. Then, Annie shouted Kieran and stormed back into the living room. There, Brent grabbed Kieran by the collar, and the next moment, a loud noise filled the room. My name is Emma. I'm a 31-year-old housewife. I married Kieran when I was 28. We met at a cafe we both frequented. We were regulars who knew each other by face and greeted when we met. It was just that until one day, when the cafe's popular dish was down to the last one, Kieran let me have it. Kieran is a big guy with a loud voice to match. He's assertive, but he was shyly offering me the dish that day. His bashfulness contrasted with his size, which I found adorable. Looking back, I was too naive. We exchanged numbers and went on a few dates. Our first date was for steak, and on the next one, he took me, in my casual outfit, to a fancy restaurant, a bit out of place. Kieran can be inconsiderate, making decisions without consulting others. He works at a major electronics company, where he's known for being the fastest to get promoted among his peers. He's proud of his work, which often leads to him acting on his own. Love is blind, they say, and I mistook Kieran's assertiveness for masculinity, which I now deeply regret. On our third date, Kieran proposed to me. It felt too soon, but he had already booked a wedding venue. Before I could even respond, I was shocked by his initiative. Eventually, his persistence led to a whirlwind marriage just a few months after we met. My parents were surprised too, but, like me, were overwhelmed by Kieran's forcefulness. He wanted me to quit my job right after getting married, but it was all too sudden, and I couldn't leave my job. I told Kieran I'd work until I got pregnant, and he reluctantly agreed. He was the type who preferred his wife to be a housewife. The first year of our marriage passed without incident, and it was a happy one. However, Kieran still made decisions unilaterally, from buying a car to choosing our new home without consulting me. I had dreamed of seeing the aurora borealis on our honeymoon, but next thing I knew, we were eating pasta in Italy. If I ignored Kieran's selfishness, it was a happy life. But everything changed when I found out I was pregnant after a year. It felt less like tumbling down a hill and more like being on a roller coaster. As promised, I quit my job to focus on homemaking. To our surprise, I was pregnant with twins. Kieran, deeply moved, looked forward to being a dad to 2 kids at once. He was so proud that he even bragged about it at work. His phone wallpaper was the ultrasound image of the fetuses, which he showed off everywhere. I secretly found it in poor taste, but I kept quiet. The thought of twins made me more anxious than happy. Kieran, on the other hand, was over the moon and seemed indifferent to my worries. The obstetrician advised a hospital stay due to the risks of a multiple birth, which Kieran agreed to. He must have been worried about what could happen. Hospitalization was a relief for me. But it brought new worries about household matters. Kieran didn't do housework. Being the eldest of 3 brothers, he had never had to. It wasn't just that he didn't, he couldn't. The fact that his family lineage was well respected and he was a direct descendant had spoiled him. He had always had someone to take care of even his personal needs. It seemed someone had been helping out not just with the household chores, but even with personal care. I couldn't possibly leave Kieran alone at home in that state. The thought of tidying up the house after being discharged was something I felt I couldn't possibly manage. So, I asked Brent and Annie for help. I requested them to either have Kieran stay at their house while I was hospitalized or to have Annie take care of our home. I get along well with both Brent and Annie. The typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict doesn't apply to us. Despite coming from a distinguished family, they're very down-to-earth and easy to talk to. The typical mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict doesn't apply to us. Kieran ended up staying at his parents' house until I was discharged from the hospital after giving birth. I checked into the hospital, feeling relieved. Under the care of the doctors and nurses, I safely delivered twins through a cesarean section. A healthy boy and girl, both crying loudly. When it was time to leave the hospital, Kieran, Brent, Annie, Kieran's siblings and their families, and my parents all came. We were a large family of 10. The nurses and doctors were surprised to see such a large group. They commented on how happy our family seemed. To an outsider, we must have looked like a happy clan. Although I felt a bit embarrassed by the commotion, I was secretly pleased. That moment was the peak of my happiness. But life became challenging from there. Kieran's attitude changed drastically. My life before and after giving birth were polar opposites. And not for the better. Issues I had noticed before became more pronounced, and any endearing qualities he might have had disappeared. This change started when Kieran returned home. The first thing he said was, "There's nothing like being in your own home." As he stretched out comfortably. I stretched myself too thin, indeed. I, too, thought my home was the best. But here I am, with twins in a baby carrier and bags in both hands. Thinking about the life ahead, there's just no way I can afford to stretch myself thin and relax. Brent, Annie, and my parents had all kindly suggested that we spend some time alone as a family. My parents live about 2 hours away by train, so they decided to stay in a hotel for the night. I suggested they stay with us to save the trouble, but they insisted on going to the hotel directly from the hospital. It was nice being at my parents' home, but Mom could be really nagging after a while. Kieran threw the baby care items we got from the maternity ward onto the floor and slumped down on the sofa. Then, astonishingly, he demanded, "I want a hot coffee." With both my hands full, and even one baby against my chest and another on my back, Kieran had the audacity to ask for coffee. And not just any coffee, but hot coffee at that. How does he expect me to set up the coffee maker and pour it into a cup in this state? And he was even complaining about his shoulders being sore, rotating them as if he was the one in need of care. I decided to ignore his request for the moment. And gently laid the twins down in their crib next to the living room. That's when I felt a dull pain in my abdomen. The cesarean section wound hadn't fully healed yet. My body stiffened from the pain, and my expression contorted. But Kieran didn't even glance my way, absorbed with his mobile phone. Raising my voice at Kieran would only risk waking the twins. And I was still too weak from the hospital stay. After putting the twins to sleep, I chose to remain silent, prioritizing their sleep and my recovery. Kieran showed no interest in either household chores or childcare. It was a stark contrast to just a short while ago when even the nurses envied our happiness. Now, all I felt was anxiety. The next day, my parents arrived early. And by the afternoon, Brent and Annie had also come to help. The 4 of us, along with the 2 sets of grandparents, began the challenging task of caring for the twins. Kieran, as expected, was of no help at all. In fact, he required more attention than the babies themselves. While dealing with Kieran on the side, I devoted myself to learning the ropes of parenting. Annie reassured me, saying that this is the time when the children teach you to be a mom. It was hard to believe that someone as supportive as Annie was Kieran's mother. My parents live farther away than my in-laws, so my mom can't visit as easily. It looks like we'll be relying more on Brent and Annie. Brent is still working, so we'll mainly depend on Annie. I'm really grateful that Annie is such a kind person. Both Brent and Annie adore the twins. Even when I'm clumsily changing diapers, they tell me not to rush and are very supportive. Amidst this, Kieran was the one who became sullen. He felt left out as we were all focused on the twins. He became more demanding than usual, asking for water, wanting to read the newspaper, or saying he was hungry. Brent tried to engage Kieran in parenting, saying, "It can be hard for dads to get involved in childcare, but it's rewarding once you try." Annie is kind, but Brent is also a good person. I wonder how someone like Kieran could come from such great parents. My dad also shared how nervous he was when he first took me out, trying to relate to Kieran. But Kieran showed no interest in these valuable lessons. All that came out of Kieran's mouth were disinterested responses like, "Oh, really?" Brent and my dad's stories were meant to ease the embarrassment and anxiety of making mistakes, a kindness towards Kieran. However, Kieran seemed uninterested even in their stories. Then, Kieran went too far. Not only did he show no interest in childcare, but his selfish behavior finally made Brent and Annie angry. While I was breastfeeding the twins, Kieran came up to me, asking if the food ready yet because he's hungry. Moreover, he insisted on having a proper meal, not just any frozen food. As I was bewildered, wondering what he expected me to do while I was in the middle of breastfeeding, Brent stepped in to offer his help. "You're not a child. If you're hungry, make something yourself." Brent's statement was completely reasonable. Yet, Kieran became visibly angry. "You're a housewife, so it's only natural you should cook. I rarely use frozen food in the meals I prepare." But to Kieran, even one frozen item meant I was cutting corners. Annie joined the argument as well. "Babies can't make and eat their own food." Brent further suggested that since Kieran could also feed the baby with formula milk, he should take a turn at feeding. Faced with unanimous criticism, Kieran made a shocking statement. "If I do the feeding, then there's nothing left for the mother to do." This comment left Brent, Annie, and my parents dumbfounded. All I could do was sigh. Afterward, Annie relentlessly lectured him, and Brent thoroughly taught him childcare tasks like changing diapers. Kieran's face during this time was sullen, clearly showing his reluctance. 2 years passed, and I became pregnant again. Kieran hadn't changed at all during these years. I was constantly busy with the twins and household chores. Without Brent and Annie's help, our family life would have fallen apart long ago. Annie helped with the housework, and Brent tried to teach Kieran about parenting. Kieran, seemingly annoyed by his parents, found excuses to leave the house often. He claimed he was busy with work trips and overtime work, but it seemed he just didn't want to be home. This pregnancy wasn't twins, but my morning sickness was worse than before. I couldn't stand the smell of bread, so pasta became a regular meal. Kieran was unhappy about this too, constantly complaining about wanting bread. Annie, frustrated by his complaints, told him to make his own meals. Surrounded by Annie and Brent, Kieran reluctantly cooked. Regardless of how it looked, I tried to eat the meal he prepared. However, due to my morning sickness, I couldn't finish it. Kieran sighed dramatically at the sight of the leftover food. "I went through the trouble of making this, and this is what I get? If it's too awful to eat, just say so." After dropping this sarcastic remark, Kieran left the house. He returned an hour later. From that point on, Kieran completely stopped doing any housework or childcare. His excuse was that his efforts were a waste of goodwill. Unashamedly, on his days off, he started fishing as a hobby. On weekdays, he used work and socializing at work events as excuses to go to bars, coming home late. There were days when I didn't even see Kieran's face. I apologized multiple times about the meal issue and asked for his help around the house. Hoping he'd come home earlier on weekdays and spend some weekends at home was a modest request, I thought. I just wanted him to spend a little time with the twins. But Kieran's response was unbelievable. "You've been raising the twins for 2 years. You must be used to it by now." With that, he'd leave for fishing. And, "This is your second pregnancy, and it's just one baby this time. There's nothing I can do." He'd even say things like that. The twins, now 2 years old, haven't warmed up to Kieran at all, perhaps due to his indifferent attitude. In fact, they seem to dislike being around Kieran. They'd even start to cry if he just walked by. What I regret is wondering why I got pregnant with a third child. Perhaps I was fooled by Kieran's occasional whims of kindness. It's regrettable, but there's nothing I can do about it now. The baby growing inside me isn't to blame. Despite my frustrations, my pregnancy was progressing smoothly, and I was nearing full term. Like last time, I was scheduled for a cesarean section. The preparations for hospitalization weren't an issue, thanks to my previous experience. However, the due date being right after Christmas meant a busy holiday season. There would be a big Christmas party at the in-laws, which I'd likely miss this year. The biggest concern for this birth was Kieran. Now, there was the added responsibility of taking care of the twins. I needed Kieran's help. But I knew it was too much to ask for him to take time off work for the birth. So, to compromise, I asked if he could at least take care of the kids after work. His response was cold and devoid of kindness, saying he couldn't make such a promise. Then, Kieran said something even worse. "It's embarrassing for a man to take time off work for his wife's birth. It makes me look like a useless husband who's henpecked by his wife." Unable to hold back any longer, I was about to retort when Kieran demanded food. His words immediately drained my will to argue. He continued to complain during the meal, upset by my request. "By the age of 2, they should be able to eat by themselves." They might be able to eat, but they certainly can't cook. Kieran lacks the quality of thoughtfulness. Irritated, I couldn't help but respond. "Then you should be able to do more than a 2-year-old. Show them how it's done." Unfazed by my sarcasm, Kieran said something even more outrageous. "I'm fine. You all live off my earnings. How does that logic even work?" Kieran's argument is far too flawed. Up until my hospitalization, he repeatedly reminded me that he was the one providing for me. I never intended to quit my job. It was Kieran who insisted I leave work to focus on household duties after we got married. Each time he says I'm providing for the family, I think to myself, you have no right to say that. With all these frustrations, the week of my hospitalization arrived. Then, Kieran made another insensitive comment. "Make sure you attend the Christmas party." I couldn't understand why he would say such a thing. He was worried it would look bad if the eldest son of the family with direct lineage to respected ancestry attended alone. He had no understanding of the pain and risks involved in giving birth. Childbirth is a life-threatening endeavor. Kieran continued with unbelievable remarks. "Why should I be the only one to attend? Who's going to do the cooking and serve the drinks?" Was he mistaking me for a servant or a housekeeper? It was unthinkable to risk my life for the sake of Kieran's pride. It's astonishing what Kieran can come up with. Kieran and I repeatedly had intense exchanges of come and no, it's impossible. In the end, Brent talked to Kieran, and it was decided that I wouldn't attend. As Christmas approached, Kieran remained sullen, and it was the day before my hospitalization. Unfortunately, it also happened to be the day of the Christmas party. On the day of the Christmas party, I was experiencing some abdominal discomfort and was lying down beside the twins. Suddenly, I realized Kieran was standing there. Groggily, I looked up at Kieran. "Today, we're having a Christmas party with 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me." I wonder what Kieran is saying. I was filled with confusion at Kieran's words. The party was supposed to be at Tommy's house. Kieran sat down and shook my shoulder. He was demanding a meal for 20 people and desserts that the ladies would enjoy. It seemed Kieran had unilaterally decided to host the Christmas party at our house. Brent, Annie, and the rest of the family had been considerate about the twins and my pregnancy. I couldn't understand why suddenly 20 people were expected today. I hadn't noticed, but there were missed calls from Annie and Brent on my mobile phone. I was scheduled for hospitalization tomorrow. Labor could start at any time now. It was absolutely impossible to entertain 20 relatives under these circumstances. I told Kieran it was unreasonable to spring this on me suddenly. At the expense of paying a little more, couldn't we arrange for a catering service? I even humbly suggested. However, Kieran angrily raised his voice, insisting the party be at our house. Are you trying to shame me? As the wife of the eldest son of a family with direct lineage to respected ancestry, you should maintain your dignity. Kieran was imposing his selfish demands, continuing with outdated views that a wife should silently obey her husband. I lost the energy to argue back. When I fell silent, Kieran seemed to take it as agreement, smiling smugly. He then announced he was going to pick up the relatives and told me to prepare for the party before leaving. Given how everything was arranged, I couldn't possibly refuse. It would inconvenience all the relatives. With that thought in mind, I began to get ready, despite my large belly. I texted Kieran to let him know that going shopping was out of the question and I'd have to make do with what we had. I had stocked up on groceries considering my upcoming hospital stay, so using them up wouldn't be an issue. Despite the discomfort from my tight belly, I managed to prepare the meals. We were short on drinks, so I decided to order them and get it delivered. Just as I finished all the preparations, Kieran texted to say he was on his way home. In just 2 hours, I had prepared the food and drinks. I wished I could pat myself on the back. The twins were getting sleepy, so I put them to bed in another room. Soon, I heard the front door open and lively voices. I went to greet everyone. Annie and Brent expressed their concern, asking me if I was okay. The call earlier was probably made out of concern for me. I could only respond with a vague smile and tried to brush it off. The living and dining areas were packed with 20 guests, and the Christmas party began. I was so busy serving food and drinks that I didn't have a moment to sit down. Everyone kept asking if I was okay, but I just laughed it off. Kieran, on the other hand, was in a good mood, boasting about my resilience. However, Brent, Annie, and Tommy looked worried. Standing continuously while preparing and moving around to pour drinks made the tightness in my abdomen increasingly unbearable. Eventually, I excused myself to check on the children, using it as a reason to leave the room. Watching the twins sleep, I too fell asleep. Sometime later, what felt like tightness turned into pain. Not wanting to worry anyone, I covered my mouth with my hands. The pain in my belly grew sharper and more intense. It had been 3 hours since Kieran sprung the Christmas party on me. As I endured the pain, suddenly the door opened. And there stood Tommy, seemingly having mistaken the room for the bathroom. Sorry, I mistook this for the bathroom. Saying this, Tommy closed the door and hurried away. Soon after, Brent and Annie arrived. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they looked furious. The next moment, Annie shouted for Kieran and stormed back into the living room. I weakly stood up and returned to the living room as well. There, I saw Brent grabbing Kieran by the collar, and the next moment, a loud slap echoed through the room. Kieran's cheeks are turning red. Brent slapped Kieran on the cheek. Brent's eyes were sharp, and his usually gentle face looked demonic. Even I, who wasn't being scolded, flinched in fear. Kieran, shocked, was frozen in place. What the hell are you doing? Kieran flinched at Brent's loud voice. The relatives who had been enjoying their drinks fell silent and turned to look at Kieran. Do you understand what condition Emma is in? Annie glared at Kieran with a demonic intensity. One of the relatives noticed me and offered me a seat on the sofa. Words of anger were directed at Kieran from the other family members. You said the birth was still far off, but she's about to give birth, isn't she? I thought you said she was in the stable period, someone commented. It seemed Kieran had convinced the relatives that my delivery was still far off. He had told Brent and Annie that there were no signs of labor yet, which is why my hospitalization was postponed. Disdain filled the room as everyone started looking at Kieran with contempt. Relatives with children around the twins' age expressed their disbelief. Women were saying things like, "I can't believe this. If I were in her shoes, it would be unforgivable. What a terrible husband." There were also apologetic voices saying they were sorry for not knowing, feeling deceived by Kieran. The atmosphere was far from festive, resembling more of a funeral. Unable to withstand the mood, Kieran started making strained excuses. "She's always making excuses about taking care of the twins or being pregnant, or saying it's too close to the delivery to do any housework." Everyone turned their attention to Kieran, wondering what he was trying to say. "That's why I made her prepare food for 20 people today, and even serve drinks." I couldn't make sense of his words. And I'm sure everyone else was even more bewildered. Yet, Kieran continued. "She hasn't done anything up until now. This is hardly enough to make up for it." The revelation that he made me cook for 20 people caused an uproar among the guests. Kieran, faced with their condemnation, began to sweat. A female relative suggested they disband immediately, and people started to clean up. The twins' crying could be heard from the back. Brent and Annie went to check on them. Tommy, who has a child about the same age as the twins, looked at Kieran with disdain. "That's despicable," Tommy murmured quietly. Kieran was belittled by everyone as both a husband and a father, shrinking smaller in their presence. His usually assertive and arrogant demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my belly. The intervals between the pains seemed to be getting shorter. It was likely that labor has started. I tried to speak to Kieran, who was being scolded and had shrunk down. But he was unresponsive in shock. Someone asked if they should call the hospital for me, and I nodded slightly. Another person handed me a phone. And when I called the hospital, they told me to come in immediately. I announced to everyone that I was heading to the hospital and tried to stand up, but I couldn't get up. Tommy suggested calling an ambulance, and at that, Kieran finally reacted. "If you're calling an ambulance, tell them not to use the siren. It'd be embarrassing if the neighbors found out." I couldn't believe Kieran was more concerned about appearances than my condition. Amidst the stunned silence of everyone, Kieran continued. "If you're going, go by yourself. It's your fault the mood was killed anyway." It wasn't my fault at all, it was due to Kieran's lies. Everyone must be thinking the same. Amid the astonishment of everyone present, another loud sound was heard. Before anyone realized, Annie, who had returned, slapped Kieran on the cheek. Kieran clutched his face, tears welling up in his eyes. "I never thought you could be so morally corrupt. Giving birth is a matter of life and death." Standing behind Annie, Brent was holding the twins, one in each arm. "The pain Emma has endured is nothing compared to this." Brent, too, seemed furious, his arms trembling as he carefully placed the twins on the floor. "It's not my fault. I'm the one providing for everyone here." Kieran insisted that I was to blame for embarrassing him in front of everyone and that he was faultless. Even in such a moment, Kieran's sense of elitism was evident. Naturally, no one sympathized with Kieran. My Sael, Caitlin offered to drive since she hadn't been drinking, raising her hand. The room erupted in cheers. The decision was made for Caitlin to drive our car, and everyone quickly started moving. Some to fetch my hospital bag from the bedroom, as directed by Annie, and others to tidy up, with Brent collecting the empty dishes. Kieran alone, rubbing his slapped cheek, was fuming, muttering that if it weren't for Dad and Mom, he'd be pressing charges. Perhaps embarrassed and his pride wounded, Kieran's face turned beet red. Moreover, even his ears turned red, indicating he must have felt quite humiliated. The commotion woke the twins, who started crying loudly. With the women busy tidying up, the men took turns trying to soothe the twins. Kieran didn't lift a finger to help. and everyone else seemed to have given up on him. At that moment, I felt utterly fed up with Kieran. I honestly thought I no longer needed such a useless partner. It was Tommy who stepped in to entertain the twins, saying he often played with his own kids and started playing with them. He said that he's used to playing with his kids at home, so you can leave it to me. With that, he started playing with the twins. With support, I stood up and informed him that there were toys in the children's room and that the kids had no food allergies. I also told them to feel free to use any food from the fridge. Kieran kept muttering to himself that he wasn't wrong until the end, but I ignored him and headed for the entrance. Caitlin then drove me to the hospital in our car. Upon arrival, a nurse immediately called for a doctor, who took me to the delivery room. It seemed I was close to giving birth, given the intervals of my contractions. Sure enough, as soon as I was on the delivery table, I gave birth. It was a relief that it was an easy delivery. However, the one who I truly felt sorry for was Caitlin. Unable to leave, she ended up having to stay until the next morning. The day after I safely gave birth, Annie and Brent came to the hospital with the twins. After the incident, Kieran had sulked in a corner of the room, drinking beer from a can. Brent took Kieran to the bedroom, not wanting the children to see their father being scolded. Out of the twins' hearing, Brent reportedly scolded Kieran all night long. Kieran seemed to have lost all his spirit. Brent shared yesterday's events with a wry smile. Eventually, Kieran came to my hospital room. In front of Brent and Annie, he was meek and quietly apologized for his actions the day before. The impact of being hit by both Brent and Annie seemed to have deeply affected him. They kindly left me alone with Kieran. But his attitude changed immediately. "It's your fault I got hit by Dad and Mom." He went on to complain about my shortcomings and lack of consideration. At that point, I was utterly fed up with Kieran. I firmly decided to divorce him then. Despite the apprehension of becoming a single mother with 3 children, I knew I couldn't stay with Kieran any longer. Without hesitation, I pressed the nurse call button. A nurse came right away. And soon after, Brent and Annie returned to the room, wondering what was happening. "This man is a stranger to me. Please ask him to leave." The nurse looked bewildered, but Annie seemed to understand. She promptly escorted Kieran out of the room. With Kieran in tow, Brent and Annie left the hospital. As they were leaving, they mentioned that my parents would visit in the afternoon. True to Annie's words, my parents arrived in the afternoon. I shared the events of the previous day and my decision to divorce Kieran with them. My parents initially thought Kieran had been unfaithful when they heard about the divorce from Annie. They had been under the impression that divorce always involved infidelity. They couldn't have imagined that a heavily pregnant woman was forced by her husband to prepare for and serve at a Christmas party. I took my time, explaining the circumstances to my parents intermittently. Not only did I talk about being made to prepare meals for 20 people and being forced to serve drinks, but I also shared, through tears, how hard it had been and how much I had endured up until now. As they listened, my parents cried with me. By the end of our conversation, we were all smiling through our tears. My mom gently suggested I recuperate at their home after the hospital. I was discharged without issue and have been resting at my parents' house since. Regarding the divorce, Brent and Annie agreed there was no reason to oppose it. The only one who was vehemently against it was Kieran. He tried to contact me numerous times. But I blocked his calls and informed Brent and Annie not to let him contact me. Without me to serve almost as a servant, Kieran seemed to have lost his mental stability. Living alone, he couldn't keep the house tidy, and it became cluttered with trash. At work, he vented his frustration through power harassment, nearly facing disciplinary action from HR. Despite this, his behavior persisted, extending even to clients and partners, eventually leading to his dismissal. By then, it seemed no one sympathized with him. Currently, Kieran is re-educating himself on human decency while working on the family farm. Kieran apparently often cries, saying that the home he shared with me was his oasis of peace. I heard all of this from Annie, who has been in touch with me. But for me, that home was nothing but a desert. With Brent and Annie's help, my divorce from Kieran was finalized smoothly. The house we lived in was sold, and I received the entire sum from the sale as compensation in the divorce settlement. I decided to live with my parents. I still keep in touch with Brent, Annie, and Tommy. Sometimes, the twins ask to see Caitlin and Tommy, who happily play with them. For Brent and Annie, the twins are still their grandchildren. They visit whenever they can, enjoying their time with all three kids, who affectionately call them Grandpa and Grandma. The children have also grown fond of Grandpa and Grandma. Looking back, if it weren't for that Christmas party, I might not have made it to the hospital. Kieran alone couldn't have managed both the hospital trip and caring for the twins. In a way, that incident helped me come to terms with my situation with Kieran. It's odd, but I find myself grateful to Kieran for hosting that Christmas party at our home. Life is unpredictable. I'll never forget the kindness of those who helped me during that time. With my 3 children, I aim to find even greater happiness and hope to offer help to others in return.
I forgot my wallet, so it's only fair that you pay for me. I'm just relying on you after all. That back pain of yours is nothing serious, right? There had always been instances of outrageous behavior, but it was unthinkable to speak to someone in pain like that. It was clear she only thought of herself. Unaware that the way she treated others would eventually come back to her, she was a pitiable figure. My name is Christy, and I just recently turned 70. I worked for a small local company until recently, but after my contract extension ended, I've become a housewife. Having worked at the same place for nearly 50 years since high school, leaving was a bit bittersweet. But now, I'm getting used to the housewife life, and I'm enjoying the leisurely days with my husband Alex. I hadn't really taken the time to appreciate the quiet, everyday changes with Alex before, so these days feel new and exciting. Alex and I met at a familiar cafe. One Saturday, after my morning shift, I went to my favorite cafe and ended up sitting near Alex at the counter. He wasn't particularly suave, but there was something earnest about him that caught my attention. We started seeing each other more often after my Saturday shifts or on Sunday afternoons, and our conversations naturally increased. I did most of the talking, and if I got 2 or 3 responses out of 10, that was good. But I was happy that he took his time to think and respond. We grew closer, started dating, and it didn't take long for us to get married. After marriage, nothing much changed between us. I continued to talk a lot, and Alex mostly listened. It was a balance that worked well for both of us. We were blessed with a son, Joey, and our family of 3 lived happily. Back then, due to a shortage of manpower, I barely had any time off before and after giving birth, but I kept working almost without a break. It was tough, but I had to earn money for Alex and Joey. I sometimes made Joey feel lonely and neglected Alex a bit, but it was necessary. However, both Joey and Alex always respected that my job was important to me, and that I worked hard, sweating it out every day. I've almost cried tears of joy many times at the kind words from my family on Mother's Day and anniversaries. I'm so happy with my considerate son Joey and Alex, who's still a man of few words, but his presence is always comforting. During a routine day, Joey, who was living with us, confessed that he was dating a woman named Sally. Considering his past at an all-boys high school and a male-dominated college department, this revelation was quite a shock. I was surprised, but also deeply moved that he had reached an age where it's natural to fall in love. Joey was over 30, living a life commuting between home and work. I remember understanding why he sometimes came home late from work. He had been spending time with Sally. Having grown up in an environment with hardly any female presence, hearing suddenly about a woman, and one he was dating, nearly made me jump for joy. But I knew I had to keep my wits about me. If she turned out to be an unsuitable match, I was prepared for the worst. However, when I first met Sally, I felt she would be just fine. Her clear way of speaking, proper appearance, and above all, the atmosphere of genuinely caring for Joey was evident. I've always found women who express their opinions clearly easier to understand, and I was happy to see how much she valued Joey, even at the dating stage. Frankly, the impression I got when I first met her as Joey's girlfriend was good. Later, I learned Alex felt the same way. Alex, still a man of few words, reassures me by speaking up on important matters. With both Alex and me in full support, Joey and Sally's relationship continued, leading to their marriage 6 months later. Sally, being 3 years older than Joey, is quite mature. It turns out they met at work, becoming closer as they worked together on the same team. With Sally being a contract employee, she planned to resign upon marrying Joey. Joey, having worked at the same company since graduating from college, now holds significant responsibilities. With his irregular lifestyle, having someone to support him both physically and mentally is truly comforting. Having once longed for a daughter, I hope to build a good relationship with Sally. But my relief and hopes of getting along with Sally turned out to be an illusion. After getting married, Joey and Sally started living together. Both had lived at their parents' homes until then, so we gave them a modest wedding gift as they started their independent life. Sally being the eldest daughter and Joey the only son and eldest, we gave more than the usual amount. However, Sally's response to our gift was unbelievable, something I still can't forget. Wait, this amount? Just this for marrying an only son? I doubted my ears for a moment, but I knew I shouldn't spoil the mood. Considering Joey's limited experience with women, I feared he might not find someone else if this opportunity slipped away. Although I clearly heard her outrageous remark, I pretended not to, thinking it couldn't be true. Looking back, ignoring this red flag was a big mistake. Sally's arrogant behavior became more apparent whenever she visited, other than on Thanksgiving or Christmas. I catch a cold from air conditioning, but I can't stand the heat with just a fan. I don't like custard cream, only whipped cream for me. I'm on a low-carb diet, so I only eat sugar-free mayonnaise. She was like this with everything. It's one thing in your own home, but to speak this way to your husband's mother, in his family home, was unimaginable to me. Still, her requests weren't entirely unreasonable. I was annoyed, but tried to accommodate her demands as best as I could. But lately, her behavior seemed to be crossing the line. She appeared more demanding and entitled. Christy, you have some jewelry, right? I'd like to borrow some for a gathering with friends. I do have several pieces, all carefully selected and of high quality. So well preserved that they still look excellent after decades. Though I don't use them much now. You can borrow them, but please take care of them. They are very dear to me. Sure, no problem. She borrowed them, but when they were returned, they were in a terrible state. Dirty, with parts nearly falling off, how could they be treated so carelessly? It was really tough dealing with unfamiliar jewelry, but they say if you don't use accessories, they go bad, right? It was good timing for me to use them. Sally's words left me at a loss for what to say, and all I managed was a weak response. I wondered if she was this inconsiderate in her daily life too, but had no way to find out. Lately, it's mostly Sally who comes to visit. Joey and the grandchildren are rarely there. Apparently, they're busy with work and club activities, so it's usually Sally who visits alone. I wonder if Joey knows how his wife behaves in his parents' house. Whether he knows or not, I'm starting to feel that this behavior is unacceptable. Sally, my son's wife, comes to visit while Joey is busy at work. To an outsider, it may seem like a healthy relationship between a daughter-in-law and her in-laws, but that's not the case. Alex, who prefers not to speak up unnecessarily, often leaves me guessing what he's thinking. He takes Sally's remarks in stride, without a frown. I keep hoping that since they chose to live together, they'll understand each other someday, but maybe I'm mistaken. Sally, usually visiting us while Joey and the grandchildren are occupied with work or activities, kept coming regularly, about once or twice a week. I couldn't be too cold to her, and I had a bad feeling about the few candid remarks she made. Every time Sally visited, she'd make whimsical demands, like wanting certain cookies or specific tea leaves. Just when I was wondering how long this would last, Sally said something unexpected. Alex and Christy, your anniversary is coming up, right? Joey and I were talking, and we'd like to celebrate it for you, since you've been so kind to us. I was shocked to hear this from Sally, but I wanted to acknowledge her thoughtfulness, as she was a dear part of our family. Of course, we'd be delighted. Alex will be happy with your offer and the thought behind it. So it was decided that they would celebrate our anniversary. We'll reserve a special restaurant for the day. Look forward to it, Sally said. We had no idea about the venue or cost until the day, just following Sally's directions to the place. Ah, Alex, Christy, welcome! We've been expecting you. Please, this way. Oh, Joey couldn't make it because of sudden work, and our son had plans with friends. But I didn't want to waste the cancellation fee, so I came alone. It was disappointing not to spend time with Joey and the grandchildren, but unavoidable given their circumstances. The restaurant's decor screamed luxury, and we were led to a glittering private room, with dish after dish of top-quality food brought to us. Every bite was delicious, and I was touched they'd arranged such a meal and setting for our anniversary. I thought maybe Sally, despite her occasional grating comments, meant no harm, and was just comfortable enough to speak freely. But then, a server with a bill appeared. Strange, I thought I put my wallet right here. Sally, what's wrong? I can't find my wallet. How will we pay? She glanced our way as she spoke. We were supposed to be guests at our anniversary celebration, courtesy of Joey and Sally. But why was she expecting us to pay? Reluctantly, I used my card to settle the bill. Christy, I'm so sorry. My bad, Sally said, tapping her head with her fists, but her face seemed almost amused. Alex said nothing, maintaining his silence and indifference. I was frustrated with him, but even more so with her. I couldn't imagine inviting guests and then making them pay, but Sally seemed to have no such qualms. This was the terrifying part about her. Just when I was considering our future relationship, Sally unexpectedly invited me to something I never imagined. Little did I know that accepting this invitation would expose more of her true colors. Since that anniversary incident, there had been no contact from Joey or Sally. I felt a sense of peace not seeing Sally, but then one day, she called. Christy, long time no see. A Costco is opening in the next town over next week. Really? Costco's like a wholesale supermarket, right? Yes. You see those Costco shopping tips on TV, right? It's close by. Let's go. Indeed, I had heard a lot about Costco on TV and wanted to visit, but the thought of going with Sally was another matter. Her past arrogant behavior and the recent anniversary dinner, where despite being the host, she made the guests pay, left a bad taste. Honestly, the idea of going to Costco with Sally filled me with dread. Besides, I hadn't driven a car in a while and wasn't confident, and Sally didn't have a license. I was about to decline her invitation using driving as an excuse, when Alex, who had overheard the conversation, gestured to take the phone. Confused, I handed it over, and he said something unexpected. Sally, I happen to have the day off. How about I join and drive us? Great, Alex. I'll count on you for the opening day. After hanging up, Alex immediately left the room. Despite knowing Sally's past actions, he offered to go with her and even drive. I couldn't understand his thinking. The new Costco was indeed bustling with people, carts clanking everywhere. Everyone seemed to be enjoying their shopping, but I was just anxious. With just Alex and me in the household, most items at Costco would be excessive for us, so I didn't have much to buy. Not wanting to leave empty-handed, I just picked up a refill for our detergent. In stark contrast to my aimless browsing, Sally was rapidly filling her cart. "Look, this bread was on TV the other day. I'll get it. Oh, and I've been wanting this jam, too." "Sally, you're buying a lot again. You didn't forget your wallet like last time, did you?" "Christy, are you still holding a grudge about that? Scary. Besides, I need these for a home party with my mom friends." Her unapologetic attitude left me more exasperated than angry. Eventually, we started lining up at the checkout. Due to the opening sale, every line was incredibly long. I braced myself for a lengthy wait. In our cart, Sally's pile of items was mountainous, burying my lone detergent refill somewhere at the bottom. Just as I was pondering over these thoughts, Alex suddenly spoke up. "I forgot to buy something." "What's wrong? You seem so sudden." "I don't know where it is. Can you come with me? Sally, you stay in line. We'll be right back." He said this and pulled me out of the line. I followed him, wondering what he had forgotten, as he continued to walk without stopping. Suddenly, he sat down on a bench. "My back hurts. Need to rest." We were a bit away from the checkout, but could still see the people in line. I was still trying to make sense of the situation when my phone rang. "Hey, it's almost our turn to pay. Where did you go to find the forgotten item? I don't want to start lining up again from the beginning." "Sorry, Alex is having a bit of back pain and resting. Most of the stuff in the cart is what you picked out, right? I'll give you money for the detergent I picked later. Could you please pay for now?" "What? That's ridiculous! Unbelievable!" I felt bad for leaving her in the line, but did that warrant her shouting at me? Even without speakerphone, Sally's yelling was clearly audible to those around us. "Could it be that you... I forgot my wallet! This is unbelievable! All because I'm stuck with someone with a bad back? I should never have come." It's clear she was counting on us to pay the whole time, thinking I should never have come if it was going to be like this. Is she even aware of how she's backed herself into a corner? But I decided to pretend not to notice and offered some advice instead. "Forgot your wallet? What about using electronic payment or something?" "I don't know anything about that. What about all this stuff in the cart? Alex's back? I don't care about that. Just sort out the payment for my shopping." Her shrieking voice must have been clear to Alex, too. He took the phone from me, sighing. "It's clear what Sally is thinking. She ignores people in trouble but expects to be helped herself." "No, it's not like that. You're more concerned about your payment than my health. Remember, your actions will come back to you. We're going home. Find your way back on your own." "No, you can't be serious." Alex, who usually says little, firmly refused her, apparently deeply hurt by her attitude. On the other end of the phone, I could hear her repeating it was just a joke, but Alex hung up without further discussion. Later, Alex revealed with a mischievous smile that his back pain was a ruse, much to my relief. Alex and I decided to leave Sally at the store and go home, as most of the shopping was hers, and she could get home by taking a bus from the neighboring town, though it would take time. My mobile phone kept ringing with messages from Sally, but I chose to ignore them for a while. After Alex and I arrived home, I noticed several missed calls from an unknown number, which wasn't likely to be a wrong number given the multiple attempts. Curiously, I called back, only to find out it was from Costco's security office. They informed me that Sally had been taken to their office and requested me to come as her responsible party. Alex drove us back to Costco, where we headed straight to the security office. When we followed the directions to the security office, there was Sally, screaming and disheveled. The sight of her, face red and hair a mess, not caring how she looked, was unbearable to witness. "Fix the situation now! You took your time coming here!" she shouted. The security officer explained that Sally had caused the commotion at the checkout, claiming she had no money. When the cashier suggested electronic payment or a credit card, Sally became aggressive, prompting them to take her to the security office for everyone's safety. "We came with her as in-laws, and she must have given our contact as a reference. As you can see, she has no intention of paying, and we're also at a loss. We'll leave the decision of whether to involve the police to you." With that, I left the security office, not wanting to spend another moment in the same space as Sally. Later, I learned from rumors that a mom friend of Sally's had witnessed her being taken away by security, talking to the police, and her overall behavior. It wasn't surprising in a crowded store during an opening sale to have acquaintances around. This mom friend's account quickly spread, and Sally was labeled as a dangerous person who caused the scene to avoid paying for a large purchase and was thought to be a thief. This mom friend was shocked by the incident, especially since Sally was perceived as a wealthy mother. She stood out at school events with her expensive attire among casually dressed parents and was known for bringing different designer bags to tea parties, creating an image of affluence. In reality, Sally didn't own any of the luxurious items she flaunted. It turned out that all the jewelry and brand bags were mine, identifiable by their unique features and brand names. Though I had lent her some items temporarily, most were taken without my knowledge. With the spread of the Costco incident, others started reporting missing personal items. Voices of missing bags and earrings emerged, and the culprit was Sally. Her misdeeds, including secretly taking items to mom friends' tea parties and home parties and selling them on flea market apps, were uncovered. Sally, who had staked her reputation on being seen as a wealthy mom, completely lost her standing in the school and community. She was even slated to be the next PTA president, but that opportunity vanished with the Costco debacle and her past actions. Naturally, such incidents would become known to the children. It seems Sally's child, who was right in the midst of their rebellious phase, has completely stopped talking to her. According to Joey, living under the same roof was unbearable, and he was ashamed. Joey regretted letting Sally have her way due to his busy schedule and started proceedings for a divorce. Concerned about the negative impact on their child from living with Sally, Joey was preparing to take custody. Finally, peace returned to my life. With Sally no longer storming in, and Joey finalizing the discussions he had been progressing towards divorce, he officially took custody of the child. Now, me, Joey, and my grandchild, who moved nearby, are enjoying our days together. It feels like I'm helping Joey with parenting, a truly joyful and cooperative experience. This ordeal made it clear that a facade can quickly unravel in the worst ways, reminding me of the importance of being honest with myself and those around me.
I've fallen for someone else. I want to get a divorce. Our marriage was in ruins, and my husband, Vincent, handed me divorce papers. He often berated me for my whole attitude of our life. Without resisting, I accepted the divorce papers. I know the real reason he wanted the divorce. Fine. Here, the divorce papers. I signed and pushed the papers back at Vincent, who looked puzzled by my lack of resistance. I wasn't going to refuse the divorce. He was going to see what hell on earth looks like. After the divorce, I immediately went to a specific place. My name is Charlotte Henderson, wife of Vincent, a real estate company president. Vincent and I have been together for 10 years, and now he's confronting me with divorce papers. It all started about 6 months ago. Can't you settle down with your work? Vincent, who runs a real estate company, was rarely at home. It wasn't like this when we first married, but now his business thrived, his social commitments are increased. He was always out, using entertainment as an excuse. No family time on weekends, he was always going out alone. I spent my days at home, lonely. We didn't have children. And every time he left me at home, I blamed myself if it was because I couldn't have children. For Vincent, who loves kids, marrying me might have been a miscalculation. Our marital life faded away after 5 years. One day, I reached my limit and tried to negotiate for making some family time with Vincent. After dinner, as he was immersed in his hobbies, I tried to speak to him, but he didn't respond. Engrossed in some radio commentary. Go, go, go! That's it! Overtake! Do it! Vincent, fist clenched in his right hand, kept cheering passionately, completely ignoring me. It was as if I wasn't even in his sight. What kind of marriage is this? Normally, wouldn't you notice someone standing right in front of you? Is it strange that I feel this way? As I was lost in these sad thoughts, the game ended, and Vincent, throwing his earphones onto the sofa, began to complain. Damn it! What's he doing? That jockey needs to get it together. I've put a lot of money on this. It seemed Vincent was listening to a horse racing commentary. I couldn't help but wonder, horse racing over his wife's important talk? Hey, I need to talk to you. What? Can't you see I'm not in the mood for pointless chatter right now? What, you've got something important? Just get to the point then. Vincent glared at me irritably, taking out his frustration about his loss on me. I was disappointed by his rude words and attitude. Why do I have to bear the brunt of your frustration over losing a bet? I blurted out my sadness before I knew it, and Vincent snapped back, irritated. What did you say? I've been waiting patiently for your horse racing to finish because I have something to talk about. Why do I deserve to be spoken to like this? What have I done? There was also the loneliness of not being paid attention to. When he was at home, he devoted his time to his hobbies, neglecting me completely. It became clear during this fight that he thinks providing money is enough to be with me. Shut up. Stop chirping like a little bird. Talk to me when I'm in a better mood. When are you ever home for us to talk? You're always out on business entertaining, and when you are at home, it's all about you. What am I to you? I didn't get married just to be a housekeeper. My pent-up feelings erupted. I had never raised my voice like this, but I couldn't bear Vincent's harsh words and attitude. When we were dating, he was devoted, treating me like a princess. He always put me first, acted lovingly, and cherished me. I spent days filled with love, thinking marrying him would lead to a happy marriage. That's why I accepted his proposal. Initially, our marriage was enviable. What a perfect husband, everyone would say. I thought our happy days would continue. But that only lasted the first 2 years. Then, his selfishness and tyranny became evident. Now, I'm treated no better than a housekeeper. I cater to his picky eating without complaint, clean like I'm shadowing my MIL, with strict checks as if not a speck of dust is allowed. One time, he even mocked me in front of relatives for not being able to have children. My mom had to intervene, but his harassment never stopped. When we were alone, how many times did he call me useless? I endured these humiliating days because of the memories of his kindness when we were dating. I was grateful for the love he once showed me, so no matter how badly he treated me, I could endure it with a smile. But now, what about him? The man before me seems like a completely different person from back then. He shouts at me on a whim, showing annoyance at my very existence. Why is he still living with me if he finds me so bothersome? I'd rather he just leave me than continue like this. As these sad thoughts crossed my mind, Vincent uttered unbelievable words. You've become so annoying. When we were dating, you'd do anything I said, and you were pretty cute, so I married you. But I never expected you to become such a troublesome older lady after marriage. Being with you just irritates me. You're useless, can't even have kids. You're just like a housekeeper now." His words left me in despair, speechless. He doesn't see me as a woman anymore. I had suspected it, but hearing it directly from him was a shock, and I couldn't find words to respond. What were those 10 years for me? I devotedly supported him in his business, believing he loved me despite everything. I believed this rough patch would pass, and we'd return to happy days like before. I believed I was the most cherished woman to him. But now, he looks at me as if I was something inferior, annoyed by my presence. Is this the reward for supporting him for 10 years? If so, this is too cruel a treatment from God. My sadness turned to hatred, then to anger. "I'm tired of being with you." Vincent saw me clenching my fists, unable to speak. He sighed in annoyance, grabbed his cigarettes, and went outside. His wallet and mobile phone were in his pants, and I knew he wouldn't come back home that day. As expected, he didn't return home that night. I stared at the door he left through, dazed. The happy times, the moments I thought were joyful, they all flashed through my mind. Realizing I was alone, I cried out loud. This fight created a significant rift between Vincent and me. He seemed to dread even seeing my face, returning home only after I was asleep to grab a change of clothes and leave. I'm afraid of being hurt by his cutting words like that day. I too couldn't bring myself to talk to him. If he asked for a divorce now, I had nowhere to go, no place to return to. My parents passed away in a car accident right after I got married. When I lost them both within a year, I became like a shell of a person. Vincent was the one who supported me then, and at that time, I truly felt grateful to be married to him. Since then, Vincent was the only family I had. I had no other acquaintances to rely on. Except only my FIL and my L. But I couldn't bring myself to confide in Vincent's parents. They were kind to me, but no parent would be happy hearing such complaints about their son. I could even risk being disliked by them. Back then, I was too scared to take any action, a real coward. Maybe I was destined to live as a housekeeper by Vincent's side for the rest of my life. With these thoughts, I spent many nights crying myself to sleep. Then, after some time, Vincent unexpectedly returned home in a good mood. Despite not speaking for over 3 months, he came home while I was awake, carrying a box of shortcake as a peace offering. "Charlotte, this is for you." "What is it?" His sudden change in demeanor caught me off guard, and I looked at him apprehensively. Vincent, noticing my wary gaze, smiled awkwardly and handed me the box of cakes. "I've been wrong. I regret being so cold to you that day. I want to spend happy days with you again. Can we make up?" Seeing Vincent bow his head in apology made my tears flow. The kind Vincent I knew had returned. I remember hugging him, filled with faint hope. True to his word, he started treating me with care again. He was as kind as when we were lovers, made an effort to come straight home, and prioritized spending time with me despite his busy schedule. We increased our time together as a couple. The truth is, the company was struggling at that time. I was reckless and took out my frustration on you. I'm really sorry for making you feel bad. One afternoon, while watching a movie on the couch, Vincent stroked my hair and shared his feelings from that time. "No, I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have blamed you without knowing the circumstances." The air was finally clear between us. I thought we could start living happily as a couple again. That belief lasted until a phone call came to Vincent's mobile phone. One night during dinner. It was an unusual call from a woman's name. Vincent hurried to answer it, stepping outside as if he didn't want me to hear the conversation. Was it an important business contact? I thought so, but something felt off for the first time. Since the day we reconciled, Vincent had taken all his calls in front of me. The only exception was during our tumultuous rough patch. Back then, thinking about it now, Vincent persistently avoided making calls in front of me. A bad premonition crept up on me. So, when Vincent returned, I tried to coax the truth out of him. It's unusual for you to take a call outside. Someone from work? Eh? Oh, yeah, something like that. Didn't I tell you about resigning as president and starting a new venture? It was about that, an employee consultation. Vincent was planning to hand over his current real estate company to a trusted subordinate and take on the role of chairman, overseeing both his current and a new company. Everyone seems anxious without me. They keep calling me for advice. A change in leadership is a big deal for a company. Vincent talked more than usual, desperately trying to cover something up. It was clear to me. The word affair crossed my mind. Vincent was cheating on me behind my back. The moment I realized this, my love for him instantly cooled. That sounds tough. Don't overdo it. With this, I decided to thoroughly investigate Vincent's infidelity. Handling the monthly household budget efficiently, saving over $30,000. I managed to find a lawyer specializing in infidelity cases and immediately hired them. I also hired an investigator who confirmed that Vincent was cheating with a 20-year-old girl from his office. Here are the documents summarizing their relationship. The investigator handed me the report, and I was shocked to read it. Vincent had been in a relationship with this woman for over 5 years, with periods of separation. They had rekindled their relationship on the day he called her during our dinner. So that's why. The reason for our strained relationship was because things were going well between Vincent and this woman. He reached out to me for reconciliation only after being rejected by her. I was just a convenient piece for him. Realizing this, I decided to meet someone. Taking advantage of a weekend when Vincent was on a business trip, I headed to a specific location, determined to get my revenge. After a while, Vincent's new company was established, and he successfully stepped down as president. We had a lavish dinner at home to celebrate. Congratulations on your hard work, Mr. President. Managing 2 companies will be even more challenging, but good luck. Since then, our relationship had returned to the hellish atmosphere of our rough patch. His relationship with the other woman was going well again. The investigation revealed that Vincent's mistress was possessive and jealous, and he stopped treating me as a woman to avoid upsetting her and getting dumped. He deliberately created a cold atmosphere, using harsh words and actions to keep me at a distance. When irritated, he treated me like a punching bag. That's how he had been handling our relationship. All this was because his mistress, taking advantage of the fact I didn't use social media, exposed everything on hers. The investigator found it, and Vincent's and her thoughts were completely exposed. I had all the evidence I needed. Then, while I was thinking this, Vincent, with a cold gaze, let out a big sigh and handed me a piece of paper. I don't want to eat your cooking. Wasting money on such things. Do you even realize who's allowing you to live like this? I wasn't giving you money each month for this nonsense. Vincent glared at me furiously as he yelled. But his gaze didn't intimidate me at all. Looking at the paper he handed me, I saw it was a divorce application. I've found someone else. I want a divorce. Vincent announced the divorce as if it were the most natural thing, not showing any remorse. He probably thought that after the past 6 months, I would readily accept it. He probably thought that way. Though his thoughts were transparent, I chose not to say anything. Fine. Here, the divorce application. I quickly signed it and presented it back to him with the brightest smile. Vincent was astonished. Why are you agreeing so readily? He seemed to want to ask, but before he could, I started packing. I already knew he would present me the divorce papers today after seeing his mistress's social media post. All I had to prepare was a bag with my essentials. I'll arrange for the movers myself, and we can proceed with the rest through the lawyers. Goodbye. Ignoring Vincent's attempts to stop me, I quickly left the house. Despite the hellish life I endured, there were indeed happy moments. I decided to part ways with the home I shared with him and headed somewhere specific. The next day, I called the company where his mistress worked. She was a new employee at the headquarters where Vincent held his position. A mistake from a drinking party that turned into a relationship. She was 5 months pregnant, likely with Vincent's child. I decided to confront them with this shocking truth and summoned them. Please come to the chairman's family home tonight. We need to discuss something. The time is. I specifically named the mistress in the call, told her this much, and hung up without saying more, waiting for night to fall. At the appointed time, they arrived at the family home. Vincent, fuming, stormed in, having called the house repeatedly. What's going on, Mom? Why didn't you answer the phone? What is this? Entering the living room, Vincent immediately started berating his mother in a haughty tone. However, as soon as he and his mistress entered, they were shaken by the odd scene before them. What do you mean, what? Can't you see? I thought we'd have a nice dinner with everyone. I've invited your relatives. There, the representatives of the Henderson family were sipping tea, eagerly awaiting their return. Hello, Vincent. It's been a while. You said you have something to tell us? Who's this lady? She looks pregnant. Don't you have a seat for her? The relatives, unaware of the situation, asked. Amidst them, only the FIL and MIL remained reactionless, watching Vincent and his companion with a gentle smile. Vincent, you have something to tell us about this lady, right? It was Mael, Talia, who broke the silence. Talia, always kind and graceful, spoke softly, but her eyes were not smiling. Instead, they were shrouded in an almost frightening darkness, making Vincent shiver. What do you mean, something to say? No need to play dumb. We've heard everything from Charlotte. It was Fael, Keith, who delivered this blow to a faltering Vincent. In stark contrast to Talia, Keith looked at him sternly. The moment he heard Keith's words, Vincent glared at me in panic and spat out harsh words. What have you done? You're no longer my DIL, so don't meddle in family matters. Not his DIL. What does that mean? Vincent's outburst led the Henderson family to look at him curiously, voicing their questions. He was unwittingly digging his own grave, an utter fool. To think I once fell for such a man made me nauseous. As I watched in disbelief, Talia, now furious, spoke up. How dare my son neglect such a good DIL and become infatuated with another woman? Shame on the Henderson family. Realize your foolishness. Talia, in her suit, stood resolutely like the owner of a high-end restaurant, her presence overwhelming everyone. Her words must have been terrifying for Vincent. Overwhelmed by their presence, he stumbled backward and fell. Thought you got away with an easy divorce? Don't underestimate me. I've already spoken with Keith and Talia, explained the situation, and they've given me permission to claim alimony from you. They want to maintain a good relationship with me and said they'll disown you from the Henderson family. Approaching the frightened Vincent, I leaned down and whispered in a voice only he could hear, my expression menacing. That day, I bravely sought Keith and Talia, crying as I explained everything. As soon as I showed them the evidence, Keith bowed his head to me, and Talia offered support, saying I should always rely on them. I never imagined my son would stoop to such disgraceful behavior. Thank you for telling us, Charlotte. You've endured so much pain. Keith and Talia said, treating me kindly. For the first time in a long while, I felt the warmth of people's kindness. After that, both Keith and Talia were pleased to help with my plan. They informed the relatives who had celebrated our marriage about the situation and arranged for no one to side with Vincent. They had called everyone to ensure this. Never come to this house again. I don't want to see your face. You're a disgrace. Talia repeated many times. For Keith and Talia, who shared a loving relationship, infidelity was unthinkable. That their son had committed it was unforgivable. Oh, I almost forgot. As I turned to Vincent's mistress, who watched everything unfold in shock, she looked at me fearfully. I smiled reassuringly at her and handed her a medical report, revealing a shocking truth. That child isn't Vincent's. We already know. My bold statement shocked her, and Vincent too turned to us, confused and angry. Before our divorce, Vincent and I couldn't conceive, so we got tested. The results showed I was fine. The problem was Vincent. He was diagnosed with azoospermia. The medical report confirmed my words. How exactly did you conceive Vincent's child, then? I'd love to know how. Can you share that knowledge? My mocking tone visibly drained the color from the mistress's face. Vincent was enraged and started questioning to her, but Keith and the other men held him back. Through this, I successfully drove a wedge between Vincent and his mistress, leading to their breakup. The mistress ended up raising the child alone, and Vincent, now desperate, came begging me for reconciliation, which I promptly rejected. I claimed a substantial alimony in the divorce through my lawyer. Vincent, faced with the overwhelming evidence, was too disheartened to resist and complied with the lawyer's demands. Now, I work as an office clerk at the company run by Keith, helped by him and Talia. If there's anything we can do, just let us know, Keith said. You're not atoning for our son's sins. We truly think of you as our daughter, Charlotte, Talia added. Talia thanked me for having the courage to come to them, expressing deep gratitude. Despite your suffering, you've been so kind to us. We always looked forward to your letters and gifts, wondering when you would visit us again. She said, keeping my letters and pressed flowers in a cherished treasure box. If you don't mind, you can rely on us as much as you want from now on. Don't hesitate to think of this as your second home. Vincent, now disowned, was no longer allowed even to enter the Henderson home. After a month, he stopped trying to visit forcefully. Now that the turmoil has settled, I live with Keith and Talia. They offered me a home, concerned about me living alone. Why don't you come and live with us as our adopted child? They loved me so much that they even suggested adoption, and now I live happily with Keith and Talia as their true daughter.